I need you to understand something before we start. This is not the Izuku you know. That kid, gone. What's walking around in his place is ancient, unstoppable, absolutely unhinged, and somehow funnier than anything you've seen. You were not ready. Roll the damn tape.
Welcome, Legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
This is the story of how the world of heroes got a monster. Not a villain, not a threat. Something worse. Something that smiled. Let's start where all good stories start, with a boy dying in an alleyway, choking on living sewage, while the #1 hero was stuck in traffic. Izuku Midoriya was 14 years old, quirkless, 5'5", had hair that looked like a broccoli stalk, and was currently being suffocated to death by a villain made of literal sludge. The villain had crawled down his throat, his lungs were filling, his vision was going black at the edges, and the last thing he saw before his heart stopped was the crowd of bystanders holding up their phones to record humanity. What a species. His heart stopped at 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. Nobody saved him. All Might was 3 blocks away, stuck behind a car accident, still in his muscle form, sprinting but not fast enough. The heroes on scene couldn't figure out how to hit a liquid villain without hurting the hostage, so they stood there. They deliberated. They followed protocol. Protocol killed Izuku Midoriya. His body went limp. The sludge villain laughed, expanded, and prepared to use the boy's corpse as a meat puppet. The cameras kept rolling. And in the space between life and death, in the black static where a soul goes when the body quits, Izuku Midoriya opened his eyes and found himself in a dark room. It was enormous. Cathedral ceilings lost in shadow, stone walls that went on forever. And in the dead center of this infinite space, there was a man sitting in a high-backed chair in front of a massive plasma screen television, watching cartoons. The man was tall. Impossibly tall. He wore a red coat that looked like it was made from something that used to be alive. A wide-brimmed hat sat on his head. Orange-tinted glasses covered eyes that glowed like stoplights in fog. He didn't turn around. On the TV, Finn the human was fighting the Ice King. Izuku said, because even in death, his conversational skills were legendary. Where am I? Am I dead? Is this... Shh, the man said, raising one white-gloved finger. Marceline's about to sing. What? Marceline, the vampire queen. She's about to do the thing with the bass guitar. Have some respect. Izuku stood there in the void of his own dead soul, watching Adventure Time with a stranger in a red coat for approximately 90 seconds. The episode ended. The man sighed with deep satisfaction, clicked the TV off, and finally swiveled in his chair. The face that looked at Izuku was pale, sharp, grinning with too many teeth. Every single one of them was pointed. Right, the man said. Let me get a look at you. He tilted his glasses down. His eyes were blood red, ancient, and deeply unimpressed. Oh, wonderful. My new host is a broccoli-haired crybaby with a notebook full of hero facts and zero self-preservation instinct. I waited 400 years for this. Truly, the universe has a sense of humor. Who are you? Izuku whispered. The man stood. He was at least 6'7". His shadow didn't match his body. It moved on its own, spreading across the floor like an oil spill, filled with eyes and teeth. I've had a lot of names, the man said. Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler, Count Dracula, the Bird of Hermes, the No-Life King. He spread his arms wide and bowed with theatrical flair. But you can call me Alucard. Everybody does. Well, everybody who isn't already screaming. You're a vampire? The vampire, kid. Capital T, capital V. I've killed more people than smallpox, drank enough blood to fill the Pacific, and I once ate an entire army because they were standing between me and a really good sunset. Point being, I am the single most dangerous thing that has ever existed on any version of Earth, and somehow your soul landed in my living room. He looked around the dark void. metaphorically speaking. Izuku's brain, even in death, was doing what it always did, analyzing, categorizing, trying to understand. Why am I here? Alucard's grin faded slightly, just slightly. Something almost human flickered behind those red eyes. Because you're dead, heart stopped, brain shutting down, that pile of walking sewage killed you, and nobody did a damn thing about it. He sat back down and crossed his legs. And I've been stuck in here for about 40 years with nothing but my own thoughts and 3 seasons of Adventure Time on repeat, which, don't get me wrong, is a masterpiece, but a man needs to stretch his legs. So here's the deal. Alucard leaned forward, elbows on his knees, grinning again. We merge. Your body, my power. You get to live again, walk out of that alleyway, and never be helpless for a single second ever again. I get to exist in the physical world, shoot things, drink blood, and maybe finally update my Twitter. Everyone wins. He paused. Mostly me. What happens to me? Do I just disappear? Alucard waved his hand dismissively. You're still you. You'll just be better, smarter, stronger, faster, immortal, with all my power, all my memories, all my personality. Okay, yeah, it's mostly me. But your memories stay, your heart stays. That annoyingly earnest desire to help people? Still there. You'll just do it with bigger guns and better one-liners. Izuku looked down at his translucent, fading hands. He thought about his mother. He thought about all the years of being told he was worthless. He thought about every hero who stood on that street and watched him die. Will I be strong enough? He asked. Strong enough that nobody ever has to feel the way I just felt? Alucard stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed. Full, genuine, booming laughter that shook the void. Kid, he said, standing up and holding out his hand. I have 3 million souls inside me, 2 anti-monster handguns, a demonic hellhound, and I once walked through a blessed barrier made of pure silver while on fire just because someone told me I couldn't. Strong enough doesn't even begin to cover it. Izuku took his hand. The darkness swallowed him whole. Back in the alleyway, the sludge villain was mid-monologue. He was telling the crowd about how he was going to use this dead kid's body to escape the city, and how none of these pathetic heroes could stop him, and how he was going to... Izuku Midoriya's eyes snapped open. They were red. Deep, arterial, impossible red. And he was smiling. The sludge villain felt it first, a wrongness in the body he was controlling, a vibration, a heat. The boy's skin was changing, paling, and his pupils had narrowed to slits, and his smile had too many teeth, way too many teeth. And then Izuku opened his mouth, his jaw unhinged, not in a human way, in a snake way, in a deep-sea predator way. His mouth opened wider than physics should allow, and from his throat came a sound, not a scream, not a roar, a sound like 1,000 people laughing in a cave. Then he ate the sludge villain, not punched, not blasted, ate. His shadow expanded outward like a living thing, a wave of liquid darkness filled with eyes and mouths, and it engulfed the sludge villain's core, the solid nucleus at the center of the liquid body, and dragged it down into the dark. The villain screamed for exactly 1.5 seconds before the sound cut off like someone hit mute on a remote. The sludge collapsed. Without its core, it was just dirty water. It splashed across the pavement. Izuku Midoriya stood in the middle of the alley, completely dry, picking something out of his teeth with a tendril of shadow that had sprouted from his shoulder. He said, and his voice was different now. Deeper, smoother, like aged whiskey poured over gravel. Tastes like a gas station bathroom. 2 out of 10 would not recommend. The crowd was silent, dead silent. A woman in the front row fainted. A man dropped his phone. 3 separate heroes had their hands up in combat stances and absolutely zero idea what they were supposed to do with them. And then All Might arrived. He crashed onto the scene like a comet, 220 pounds of pure American-themed muscle, landing hard enough to crack the pavement. His cape billowed, his smile was locked in place. He took in the scene in half a second. No villain, no hostage, just a skinny kid with green hair, red eyes, and a grin that belonged on a wanted poster. Young man, All Might boomed, his voice echoing off the buildings. Are you all right? The villain, where did... Ate him, Izuku said. I'm sorry? Ate. Him, past tense, like food. He tasted like depression. Izuku yawned. Actually yawned. You're late, by the way. All Might's smile flickered, not much, but enough. You're right, I was late, and I'm sorry, young man, truly. But your quirk, what you just did, that was awesome, horrifying, a war crime. I was going to say remarkable. Your power, I've never seen anything like it. The way you absorbed that villain, the shadows, the regeneration. You have an incredible gift, young man. The kind of gift that could change the world. Izuku looked at All Might, really looked at him. And somewhere behind those red eyes, the part of him that was still a 14-year-old boy who'd once cried over an All Might action figure felt something. A flicker. But Alucard's grin won out. "Oh, I know," Izuku said. "I'm incredible. That's been established." All Might blinked. Then he did something he rarely did in public. He laughed. A real laugh, not the booming performance one. "You've got spirit. Listen, I want to talk to you, privately. There's something I can offer you, a power that... Let me stop you right there, Blondie." Izuku held up a hand. "If this is the part where you offer me a quirk, your quirk specifically passed down through some kind of sacred lineage thing, I'm going to have to pass." All Might's jaw dropped. "How did you... I know a lot of things. It's a vampire perk. But the answer is no. I don't need a power-up." Izuku reached into his own shadow like it was a coat pocket and pulled out a pair of orange-tinted sunglasses. He put them on. "I'm already everything I need to be." He turned and walked away. All Might stood in the ruined alleyway, watching a 14-year-old boy in a school uniform and orange sunglasses stroll casually down the street, humming the Adventure Time theme song. "What?" All Might whispered to no one in particular. "Just happened?" Izuku went home. His mother, Izuku Midoriya, saw her son walk through the front door with glowing red eyes, a deeper voice, and a shadow that moved on its own. And she did what any loving mother would do. She screamed, threw a frying pan at him, and then cried for 45 minutes straight while hugging him on the kitchen floor. To Izuku's credit, and to whatever remained of the original Izuku in there, he let her cry. He held her. He explained, gently in his own new way, what had happened. "I died, Mom." More crying. "And now I'm different." More crying. "But I'm still me. Mostly. Like 70-30. Maybe 60-40. "Izuku, your eyes are red." "Yeah, that's permanent. Also, I can't eat garlic anymore, and sunlight is annoying but won't kill me. Crosses do nothing." I checked. Inko stared at her son through tear-blurred eyes. Her baby boy, who used to cry at sad commercials and sleep with an All Might nightlight, was sitting across from her with the smile of a predator and eyes that glowed in the dark. "Are you still my son?" she whispered. The grin softened. "Just a fraction." "Always, Mom. That's the one thing that hasn't changed." She cried again. But different tears this time. Izuku spent the next 10 months training. Not that he needed to train his powers. He had 400 years of combat experience rattling around his skull, but he needed to get used to this body, his old body, his new body. The mix. He spent his evenings on rooftops, practicing shadow manipulation. He could sink into darkness and reappear anywhere within a few hundred meters. He could shape his shadows into weapons, shields, tendrils, hands. He could summon Baskerville, the demonic hellhound that lived inside his shadow, a massive canine made of black flame and hatred that existed only to eat whatever Izuku pointed it at. He practiced with the guns, the Kasul and the Jackal. They materialized from his shadows whenever he wanted. The Kasul, a 4'4" caliber silver monster that could punch through reinforced steel, and the Jackal, a 13mm anti-monster cannon that weighed 30 pounds and hit like a cruise missile. They weren't quirks, they weren't technology, they were part of him, the same way his fangs were part of him, the same way his red eyes were part of him. He set up a Twitter account at the Crimson Fucker. His first tweet was, "Just ate a guy made of sewer water, still better than school lunch." It got 47 likes and a concerned DM from a hero agency. When the UA entrance exam rolled around, Izuku Midoriya was ready. He was more than ready. He was bored. The morning of the UA entrance exam, Izuku Midoriya walked to the gates of the most prestigious hero academy in Japan, wearing a red trench coat over his school clothes, orange-tinted glasses, and a wide-brimmed red hat that he had manifested from his own shadow because, and this is a direct quote, "Drip is eternal." He was the only applicant not running. He was the only applicant not nervous. He was the only applicant actively drinking a juice box while everyone around him vibrated with anxiety. A boy with blue hair and glasses, Tenya Ida, Izuku would learn later, marched up to him at the orientation. "Excuse me, Your posture is incredibly disrespectful. This is a prestigious institution and you're wearing... Is that a costume? We haven't even been accepted yet. Izuku lowered his glasses and looked at Ida over the rims. Are you a hall monitor or a person? I genuinely cannot tell. Ida sputtered. A girl behind them, brown hair, round face, pink cheeks, snorted a laugh so hard she had to cover her mouth. Izuku glanced at her. Ochako Uraraka. She was trying very hard to look serious and failing completely. You think that's funny? Izuku asked. I think you're insane, she said, still grinning. Who wears a fedora to an entrance exam? A man of culture. He tipped the hat. She laughed again. Something warm flickered in his chest. He ignored it. Present Mike's briefing was loud, energetic, and entirely unnecessary. Izuku already knew the format. Fight robots, earn points, survive. He leaned back in his chair with his hat over his face and his boots on the seat in front of him, while Present Mike screamed about villain points. Each robot is worth different points based on difficulty. 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers, and the 0-pointer, a massive obstacle that's worth 0 points. Just avoid it. Pass, Izuku muttered under his hat. The kid next to him, a boy with weird elbows and a nervous expression, stared. Did you just say pass to the instructions? I said pass to the concept of avoiding anything. The boy slowly scooted his chair away. Battle Center B. The gates opened. 200 applicants sprinted forward into the mock city. Robots emerged from buildings, alleys, side streets, mechanical villains with glowing sensor eyes and armored plating. Izuku walked. He walked through the front gate at a leisurely pace, hands in his coat pockets, humming a song that nobody recognized but was actually the bass line from a Castlevania soundtrack. The other applicants were already fighting, blasting, punching, kicking, screaming. A boy with a tail was spinning through 1-pointers. A girl with an earphone jack on her earlobe was sending sound waves through the pavement. A 3-pointer stepped directly into Izuku's path. 8 feet tall. Reinforced steel. Weapons arms. Izuku didn't stop walking. He reached into his coat, into his shadow really, and pulled out the Kasol. The gun was massive, chrome and black steel. It looked like it had been designed to kill things that regular guns couldn't, because it had. He fired once. The round punched through the 3-pointer's center mass and exited through its back, taking a basketball-sized chunk of metal and circuitry with it. The robot toppled like a felled tree. The shockwave from the shot blew out the windows on either side of the street. 1, Izuku said. He kept walking. A cluster of 4 robots appeared around the next corner. 2 1-pointers, a 2-pointer, and another 3. They registered his presence and charged. Izuku drew the jackal with his left hand. Now he had both guns out, one in each hand, and he was still walking, and his coat was billowing behind him like a cape made of dried blood. He fired the jackal. The 13mm round hit the 3-pointer, and the robot did not break. It ceased to exist. The upper half simply vanished in a spray of shrapnel and fire. The concussive force knocked the 2-pointer sideways into a building. Izuku shot the 1-pointers with the Kasol. 2 shots. 2 explosions. 2 piles of scrap. 5, he said. In the monitoring room above the exam grounds, the UA faculty was watching. They were not okay. Present Mike had stopped commentating. His mouth was open, but nothing was coming out. Midnight was leaning forward, her eyes wide. Ectoplasm had created 3 clones just so all of them could stare at the same screen. Principal Nezu, the small, bear mouse dog creature who ran UA with the calm precision of a chess grandmaster, was sipping tea, but his paw was shaking. Zoom in on Battle Center B, Nezu said. The camera focused on Izuku Midoriya, who was now walking down a main street, firing alternating shots from both guns without aiming, hitting robots that were behind buildings, around corners, and in one case on a rooftop 300 meters away. Every shot was a kill. He hadn't missed once. He hasn't missed, Midnight whispered. He's not even looking at some of them, Ectoplasm said. What is that gun? Present Mike screamed, breaking his silence. That thing just went through 3 walls and a 2-pointer. The larger weapon, Nezu said calmly, sipping his tea, appears to be a 13mm explosive round. Custom, not manufactured by any company I recognize, and the smaller one is firing what appear to be silver-jacketed 4v4 rounds. Where's a 14-year-old getting anti-armor ammunition? Midnight demanded. His file says his quirk is listed as unknown. Nezu said. He sipped his tea again. I suspect we're about to find out why. On the ground, Izuku was having a wonderful time. He'd stopped counting at 23. Robots kept coming, and he kept shooting them, and each one went down faster than the last because he was getting comfortable with the guns again. Muscle memory from a past life, past lives, plural, was flooding back. The way the Kasul kicked, the way the jackal roared, the smell of gunpowder and ozone. God! He'd missed this. A group of applicants had started following him at a distance. Not helping, just watching. One of them, a blonde kid with a lightning bolt in his hair, Denki Kaminari, was filming on his phone. Dude, Kaminari whispered to the girl next to him, a pink-skinned girl named Mina Ashido. Dude, are you seeing this? He's shooting robots with a hand cannon, Mina said. Yes, I am seeing this. My eyes work. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. He shot that last one without looking. The coolest thing I've ever. The ground shook. Everyone felt it. A deep, tectonic rumble that traveled through the concrete and into their bones. Buildings rattled. Windows that hadn't already been blown out by Izuku's gunfire shattered. The zero-pointer emerged. It came around the corner of the mock city like a building learning to walk. 50 meters tall, treads instead of feet, a head the size of a house. It was the size of a city block, and it was moving fast, and every applicant in Battle Center B did exactly what Present Mike had told them to do. They ran. Except one. Ochako Uraraka was pinned. A chunk of debris, concrete and rebar from a building the zero-pointer had clipped, had fallen on her leg. She was struggling, pulling, trying to touch the rubble with all 5 fingers to activate her quirk, but the angle was wrong and the weight was too much, and the zero-pointer was coming and its treads were going to roll right over her. She looked up at the metal mountain bearing down on her, and in that moment she was absolutely certain she was going to die. "Someone help," she screamed. Izuku was 2 streets over. He heard her. He stopped walking. His head turned. The guns disappeared back into his shadow. "Ah," he said. "Damsel in distress. Classic." He stepped into his own shadow and vanished. He reappeared 20 meters from Uraraka, stepping out of the shadow of a fallen streetlight like he'd walked through a door. The zero-pointer was 40 meters away and closing. The ground shook with each movement of its treads. Izuku looked at Uraraka. She looked at him. Her eyes were wide with terror. "Hi," he said. "Cute cheeks, we'll talk later." He looked up at the zero-pointer, and for the first time during the exam, he stopped smiling. "Okay," he said, "playtime's over." He raised his right hand. His shadow expanded beneath him. Not slowly, not gradually, it erupted. Black. Absolute, covering the street like a wave of ink. And from that shadow, something rose. The Hound of Baskerville. It came out of the ground like a nightmare being born. A dog, in the same way a tsunami is water. Massive, the size of a 3-story building. Its body was black flame and shadow, its eyes were furnaces of red light, and its mouth was big enough to swallow a bus. It had too many teeth. All of them were wrong. It roared. The sound was not natural. It was not a bark or a howl. It was the sound of something that existed only to consume, and the air itself flinched away from it. Windows within a 2-block radius disintegrated. 3 applicants fainted. Kaminari dropped his phone and it shattered, which he would later describe as the second most traumatic thing that happened that day. Baskerville lunged. The demonic hound covered the distance between U and the zero-pointer in a single bound and hit the robot head first. Its jaws closed around the zero-pointer's head, the part the size of a house, and bit down. Metal screamed. Sparks erupted in cascades of white and orange. The zero-pointer's head separated from its body with a sound like a building collapsing, because that's essentially what it was. Baskerville shook its prize like a terrier with a rat, then dropped it. The head crashed to the ground hard enough to bounce. The body, now headless, swayed, sparked, and toppled backward in slow motion, hitting the ground with an impact that registered on seismographs across the city. The dust settled. Izuku stood in the street with his hands in his pockets. Baskerville sat beside him like an obedient dog, its tail, a whip of black fire, wagging slowly. It was the size of a building, sitting, panting shadow flame, and wagging its tail. In the monitoring room, no one spoke for 11 seconds. Present Mick broke first. "What in the actual language?" Nezu said, sipping his tea. His paw was still shaking. "That kid the zero-pointer, the dog, it ate Yes, Nezu said. I saw. Nezu. It was Aizawa's voice. The underground hero was standing in the back of the room, arms crossed, looking at the screen with an expression that on anyone else would be called fear. On Aizawa, it was extreme displeasure. What is that kid? His name is Izuku Midoriya, Nezu said. Age 14, formerly Quirkless, Aldera Junior High, he was involved in a villain incident 10 months ago, the sludge villain attack on Tatooine Street. He was clinically dead for approximately 45 seconds before somehow resuscitating. After that event, he began displaying abilities that don't match any known quirk classification. That thing he summoned is not a quirk, Aizawa said flatly. No, Nezu agreed. He set his tea down. I don't think it is. On the ground, Izuku had walked over to Uraraka and was lifting the rubble off her leg with one hand. The concrete slab weighed approximately 300 kilograms. He lifted it like a pillow. You okay? He asked. Uraraka stared at him. Her brain was doing that thing where it tries to process too much information at once and just gives up. You, she said. Giant dog. Head. What? I'll take that as a yes. He set the rubble down and offered her his hand. She took it. He pulled her to her feet. Her leg was scraped but not broken. Thank you, she managed. You saved me. Don't make it weird. He pushed his glasses up. I just didn't want to watch a zero-pointer flatten someone with a face that cute. Would have ruined my whole afternoon. She turned red. Not pink. Red. The kind of red that starts at the neck and doesn't stop. Behind Izuku, Baskerville dissolved back into his shadow with a sound like a bonfire being extinguished. The street was quiet. The exam was over. A buzzer sounded. Time's up. Present Mike's voice echoed through the speakers. It was noticeably shakier than usual. Izuku put his hands back in his pockets and walked toward the exit. His final score was 77 villain points and approximately 400 therapy bills. The acceptance letter came a week later. Izuku sat on his bed, opened the holographic projection from All Might, who, he noted with amusement, was clearly reading from a script, and got the news he already knew. Young Midoriya, you scored first place in the practical exam with 77 villain points, a new record, and an additional 45 rescue points for your courageous save of a fellow applicant. Your total of 122 points is the highest in UA history. Obviously, Izuku said to the empty room. Furthermore, I want you to know the offer still stands. If you ever change your mind, pass. About the power I mentioned, my door is. He closed the projection. His mother cried. Happy tears this time. She made katsudon. He ate 3 bowls, which was impressive considering he technically survived on blood and didn't need food at all. He ate it anyway, because his mom made it, and some things transcend being an immortal vampire god. After dinner, he posted on Twitter, got into UA, first place. No quirk, just built different. It got 12,000 likes. A Hero News account quoted it. Katsuki Bakugo, who had scored second place and had been checking his phone obsessively, saw the tweet and punched a hole through his desk. The first day of Class 1A, Izuku walked through the door of the classroom wearing his UA uniform with 2 modifications. The orange-tinted glasses and the red trench coat, which he draped over his shoulders like a cape. His tie was loose, his shirt was untucked. He looked like he'd either just left a nightclub or was about to burn one down. The classroom went quiet. 20 students. Future heroes. The best of the best. Every single one of them stared. Izuku scanned the room. He spotted Uraraka in the back, who gave him a small wave and an embarrassed smile. He spotted Ida near the front, sitting ramrod straight, who gave him a look of intense recognition and disapproval. He spotted Bakugo. Bakugo was already glaring. Their eyes met across the classroom. Bakugo's palms crackled with small explosions. His jaw was tight. His whole body was coiled like a spring. Izuku smiled at him, not a friendly smile. The kind of smile a cat gives a mouse. Morning, Bakugo, Izuku said pleasantly. Second place looks good on you. The explosion that came out of Bakugo's palms scorched his desk. The hell did you just say to me? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was pretty clear. Should I use smaller words? I'll kill you. You. Sit down. The voice came from the floor. Literally. A yellow sleeping bag in the doorway unzipped, and a man climbed out of it like a caterpillar emerging from a cocoon. He had long black hair, tired eyes, a 5 o'clock shadow that was closer to midnight, and the general appearance of someone who had given up on personal grooming as a concept. Shota Aizawa, Eraserhead, their homeroom teacher. "It took you 8 seconds to start fighting," Aizawa said. "That's 8 seconds of my life I'm never getting back. Go change into your gym clothes. We're doing a quirk assessment test. The student who scores last gets expelled." The class erupted into protests. Aizawa did not care. He led them outside. Izuku pulled his trench coat tighter and followed. The quirk assessment test was supposed to be a measure of each student's abilities, a series of physical challenges enhanced by quirk usage: ball throw, 50-meter dash, grip strength, long jump. The usual. For most students, it was stressful. For Izuku, it was comedy. First event, 50-meter dash. Ida, using engine quirk, blazed through in 3.04 seconds. Impressive. Fast. The fastest in the class, Izuku's turn. He stood at the starting line. The robot timer beeped. Izuku stepped into his shadow and reappeared at the finish line. "0.0 seconds, the robot announced. The class stared. That's not possible," Ida stammered. "You can't have 0 seconds. The measurement has to..." "Sounds like a you problem," Izuku said. Second event, grip strength. A boy named Mezzo Shoji, who had 6 arms and was built like a truck, scored 540 kilograms. The class was impressed. Izuku gripped the dynamometer. His shadow flickered around his hand. The device shattered, not broke, shattered into pieces, like it was made of glass. "I think that's infinity," Izuku said, looking into the sparring mains. "Or at least enough. Someone write that down." Aizawa stared at his clipboard. He wrote something down. His pen moved very slowly, like he was questioning every life choice that had led him to this moment. Third event, ball throw. This was the main event. Bakugo went first, launching the ball with an explosion that sent it 705 meters. He turned to the class with his usual snarl, practically daring someone to beat it. Izuku's turn. He picked up the ball, tossed it up and down in his hand a few times. "You know what?" he said. "Let's make this fun." He pulled the jackal from his shadow. The class collectively took a step back. Momo Yaoyorozu's eyes went wide. Kaminari whispered, "Oh no," with genuine reverence. Mineta hid behind Shoji. Izuku tossed the ball in the air, aimed the jackal, and fired. The 13mm explosive round hit the ball at the apex of its arc. The detonation was visible from the school building. The shockwave flattened the grass in a 20-meter radius. The ball, or whatever was left of it, became a burning streak across the sky. Aizawa's device beeped. He looked at the number. He blinked. He turned the device around, 3,421 meters. The class lost it. 3,000, Kaminari screamed. "He shot it," Jiro said, pulling her earphone jacks out of her ears because the gunshot had almost deafened her. "He literally shot the ball. With a gun," Sero added, as if clarification was needed. "Where did he get a gun?" Ida was having an aneurysm. "Firearms are illegal for minors. This is a school. There are regulations." Izuku made the jackal disappear back into his shadow. "Relax, hall monitor. It's not technically a firearm. It's technically me." Bakugo's face had gone through several colors during this process. Red, white, red again, and was now settling on a purple that suggested either rage or cardiac arrest. "What the hell was that?" he screamed. What is your quirk?" "I don't have one," Izuku said. "Bullshit." "No quirk, just dead and angry about it," he grinned. "Cope." Bakugo lunged. He crossed the distance in less than a second. Right hand pulled back, palm sparking, a full-power explosion aimed directly at Izuku's face. It was fast. It was brutal. And Bakugo, for all his personality issues, was genuinely talented. The explosion connected. Izuku's head came off. The class screamed. Uraraka screamed. Ida screamed. Aizawa's eyes went wide and his capture scarf launched out on instinct, wrapping around Bakugo and yanking him backward, but Izuku's body was still standing. His head was gone. Just gone. A charred stump where his neck used to be. Blood. Thick, dark, wrong colored blood dripped down his uniform collar. Then the blood stopped dripping. It reversed. It flowed upward, swirling, yet condensing, and in the span of 2 seconds, shadow bats swarmed from every dark corner of the field and converged on the stump. His head regrew. Bone first, then muscle, then skin, then hair, then those red eyes, open and amused, and that grin, wide and full of pointed teeth. "Oh," Izuku said, rolling his neck. That tickled. Dead silence. The entire class was frozen. Bakugo, wrapped in Aizawa's scarf, looked like he'd seen a ghost, which was close enough to accurate. Izuku reached up, dusted ash off his shoulder, and then moved. Fast. Faster than anyone saw. One moment he was standing 10 meters from Bakugo. The next, his open palm was on Bakugo's chest. He pushed. Bakugo left the ground. He traveled backward at roughly the speed of a car on a highway and hit the brick wall at the edge of the field hard enough to leave an outline. A Bakugo-shaped crater in solid brick. The explosion of dust and debris was dramatic. Bakugo slid down the wall, landed on his back, and did not get up immediately. He was breathing. He was conscious. But he was staring at the sky with the expression of someone whose entire worldview had just been picked up, examined, and thrown in the trash. The class stared at the crater. Then at Izuku. Then at the crater. Then at Izuku. Anyone else want to try? Izuku asked pleasantly. Nobody moved. Aizawa looked at Izuku for a long, silent moment. His eyes activated. The red glow of Erasure, his quirk, which could nullify any quirk he looked at, Izuku felt it. The wave of nullification passed over him like a warm breeze. Nothing happened. His eyes were still red. His shadows still moved. His grin didn't falter. Izuku said. Was that supposed to do something? Because I felt a little tingly, but that might just be the breeze. Aizawa's erasure deactivated. His dry eyes watered. He blinked. Your abilities aren't a quirk, he said. It wasn't a question. Bingo. Give the homeless man a prize. I'm your teacher. You were sleeping in a bag on the floor 30 minutes ago. A muffled laugh came from somewhere in the class. Aizawa's eye twitched. What are you? Aizawa asked. Izuku tipped his glasses down and his red eyes burned bright in the afternoon sun. I'm a vampire. A pause. A vampire. The vampire. But we can workshop the title. Aizawa stared at him for 5 full seconds. Then he turned around, walked to his sleeping bag, and it climbed back in and zipped it shut from inside the bag, muffled. I don't get paid enough for this. The assessment continued. Izuku scored first in every single event. It wasn't close. It wasn't competitive. It was a man playing basketball against toddlers. The class watched in a mix of awe, terror, and the slow realization that the curve in this class was broken beyond repair. Final rankings appeared on Aizawa's screen. Izuku Midoriya, first. By a margin that made second place look like last place, nobody got expelled. Not because Aizawa was feeling merciful, but because the difference between the bottom student and second to bottom was so small compared to Izuku's lead that expelling anyone felt statistically meaningless. Go home, Aizawa said from inside his sleeping bag. Class starts tomorrow. Be on time. As the class filed out, Uraraka fell into step beside Izuku. She was quiet for a moment, which he appreciated. So, she said, vampire. Vampire. Like actual vampire. Blood-drinking, immortal, turned into a bat vampire. I turn into a lot of things. Bats are just the most theatrical. She looked at him, brown eyes, wide and curious, not afraid. That surprised him. Does it hurt? She asked. When you regenerate, when your head, she made an exploding gesture with her hands. Does it hurt? Nobody had asked him that before. Not his mom. Not All Might. Not anyone. It's complicated, he said. She nodded, like that was enough. Like she didn't need to push. I'm Ochaku Uraraka, she said. Thanks for saving me at the exam and for the cute cheeks comment. That was smooth for a guy who just grew his head back. I contain multitudes, Izuku said. She laughed. He decided he liked the sound. See you tomorrow, vampire boy. See you tomorrow, round face. She punched his arm. It didn't hurt. Nothing hurt. But he let her think it did, and the smile he gave her was the most human thing he'd done all day. The next 2 weeks were chaos, not for Izuku. Nothing was ever chaos for Izuku. For everyone else. Class 1A had to adjust to the reality that one of their classmates was functionally a god wearing a school uniform, and the adjustment period was rocky. Aizawa adjusted by pretending Izuku didn't exist during lessons. Present Mike adjusted by being louder than usual, which nobody thought was possible. Midnight adjusted by being professionally fascinated by his abilities, which Izuku handled with the grace of a man who'd been dealing with people being weird about vampires for centuries. All Might, who was teaching foundational hero studies, adjusted the worst. He kept trying to talk to Izuku privately, kept bringing up One for All, kept hinting that Izuku needed a proper teacher, a mentor, someone to guide him. Izuku shut it down every time. Blondie, my man, my absolute unit, Izuku said one afternoon, leaning against the hallway wall while All Might stood before him in his deflated skeletal form, coughing blood into a handkerchief. I appreciate the concern, truly, but I've been alive, on and off, for over 400 years. I've fought crusades, toppled empires, and once bit a Nazi werewolf in half during a war on a blimp. I don't need a mentor, I need people to keep up. All Might looked at him with those sunken, tired eyes. You're still a boy, Midoriya, no matter what lives inside you. The last person who called me a boy was a paladin. I ate him. Beat. That's a joke, mostly. All Might sighed. I see something in you. The part that ran toward that sludge villain. The part that saved that girl at the exam. That's not the monster talking, Midoriya. That's you. Izuku's grin didn't waver, but something behind it shifted, just slightly. Yeah, well, he said, pushing off the wall. Don't tell anyone. Rat. It'd ruin my reputation. He walked away. All Might watched him go and made a decision. He'd find a different successor for One for All. But he'd keep an eye on this boy, because underneath all the teeth and shadows and 400 years of accumulated trauma, there was still a 14-year-old kid who ran toward danger to save people. And that was more heroic than any quirk. Then came the USJ, the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, an off-campus training facility designed to simulate disaster scenarios, floods, fires, landslides, storms. Class 1A arrived by bus, accompanied by Aizawa and 13, the space-themed rescue hero. The bus ride was eventful only because Izuku sat in the back with his hat over his face, and Bakugo sat in the front radiating fury. Since the quirk assessment incident, Bakugo had not spoken to Izuku, not directly. He'd trained obsessively, pushed himself harder than anyone, and his performance in class was exceptional. But he hadn't spoken to Izuku. Because Bakugo was many things, loud, aggressive, prideful, talented, but he was not stupid. And when a boy regenerates from decapitation and puts you through a brick wall with an open palm, even Katsuki Bakugo recognizes the distance between them. He just hadn't figured out how to deal with it yet. At the USJ, 13 started explaining the purpose of the facility. Rescue training. Proper hero conduct. The responsible use of quirks. Izuku was not listening. He was staring at the central plaza, his red eyes narrowed behind his glasses. The shadows at his feet stirred, not dramatically, not visibly to anyone else, but they stirred. Every instinct Alucard had accumulated over centuries of violence was humming. Something's wrong, he said quietly. Uraraka, standing next to him, looked up. What? The lights flickered. The fountain in the central plaza sputtered, and then, in the dead center of the facility, a black portal tore open like someone had cut a hole in reality. Figures poured through. Dozens of them. Villains. The kind of bottom-tier criminals that operated in the underground. Mutation quirks, brute force types, weapons. They spread across the facility like ants from a kicked mound. And in the center of the portal, two figures stood. One was thin, hunched, covered in severed hands. Pale blue hair, dry cracked lips, and eyes that held the dull, unfocused anger of someone who hated everything equally. Tamura Shigaraki, the other was not human. It was massive. 7 feet tall, engineered muscle stacked on engineered muscle, with an exposed brain and a beak-like face. Its eyes were blank. Its body was a weapon. The Nomu. Stay back, Aizawa commanded, his scarf already unwinding. 13, protect the students. You'll what? Izuku interrupted. He was already walking forward, down the stairs, toward the villains. His hands were in his pockets. His coat billowed behind him. Midoriya, get back here! That's an order. Yeah, see, here's the thing about orders. Izuku glanced back over his shoulder. His eyes glowed like brake lights. I don't follow them. He kept walking. Aizawa moved to stop him. But the warp villain, Kurogiri, the mist-bodied teleporter, chose that moment to appear before the class, cutting them off. Aizawa had to redirect, engaging the wave of villains flooding from the portal, trusting that his students would retreat. Izuku did not retreat. He walked down the stairs and into the central plaza. The villains saw him, a kid in a school uniform and a red coat, walking alone into a crowd of 50 armed criminals. They laughed. Oh, look, one of them said, a big guy with rock skin and a crowbar. Little hero student lost his way. What's the matter, kid? Gonna cry? Izuku stopped in the center of the plaza. He looked around at the ring of villains closing in on him, like he counted them. 53, he said. That's barely an appetizer. He reached into his shadow and drew the Kasol. The rock-skinned villain charged first. Izuku shot him in the kneecap. The silver round punched through the stone like it was drywall, and the villain went down screaming, his leg bending the wrong way. Then Izuku started moving. He fired the Kasol twice, dropping 2 villains trying to flank him. One took a round through the shoulder, the other through the thigh. They spun and fell. He sidestepped a fire blast from a villain on his left without looking, drew the jackal with his free hand, and put a 13mm round into the ground at the villain's feet. The explosion knocked 7 villains off their feet. "Now then," Izuku said, standing in the smoke, guns out, red eyes burning. "Who's next?" They came all at once. The smart thing to do would have been to run, but villains as a demographic are not known for smart decisions. A villain with extending blades for arms rushed Izuku from the right. Izuku caught the blade with his bare hand. It sank into his palm, through it, and out the back. He didn't flinch. He looked at the blade going through his hand, looked at the villain's terrified face, and shot him in the shoulder with the kasol. "That was rude," Izuku said, pulling the blade out of his hand. The wound closed in under a second. A villain with a super-strength quirk hit him from behind with a steel pipe. The pipe connected with the back of Izuku's skull hard enough to bend the metal. Izuku turned around slowly. The dent in his skull was already filling in, bone and skin knitting together. "Was that supposed to hurt?" he asked. "Because it didn't. And now I'm going to have to hurt you, and the asymmetry bothers me." He headbutted the villain. The villain flew backward 20 feet and didn't get up. From the stairs, the students of Class 1A watched in horror and fascination. He's just walking through them," Kirishima said, his hardened fists clenched at his sides. "They can't touch him." "They are touching him," Jiro corrected. "He just doesn't care." "Someone stabbed him in the hand and he shot them," Kaminari said, while the knife was still in his hand. "That's metal," Kirishima whispered with genuine admiration. "That's terrifying," Ida corrected. Uraraka watched in silence. Her hands were clasped together. She wasn't afraid of Izuku. She was afraid of what the villains might do if they escalated, which was irrational, she knew. Nothing they did mattered. But she worried anyway. Down in the plaza, Izuku had worked through about 30 villains in under 2 minutes. The ground was littered with bodies, groaning, bleeding, alive, but very much wishing they weren't. He hadn't killed anyone. Not because he couldn't, because it was more entertaining this way. He was humming Beethoven's Fifth, the doom, 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 doom part. He was humming classical music while shooting villains in non-lethal locations with anti-monster rounds. Shigaraki watched from behind the Nomu, scratching his neck. His fingers dug into the dry skin, leaving red marks. "What is that?" he muttered. That wasn't in the intel. The schedule said All Might and a bunch of kids. That thing isn't." "He's a student," Kurogiri said, his mist body flickering. "Class 1A, Izuku Midoriya. His abilities are unclassified. He just shot 30 of our guys without breaking a sweat. 34. I don't care about the exact number." Shigaraki's voice cracked. He scratched harder. "Send the Nomu. That's what it's for. It was made to kill All Might. It can handle 1 kid." The Nomu moved. It crossed the plaza in a blur of engineered speed. Faster than something that large should move, faster than human eyes could track. It reached Izuku in less than a second and grabbed him. One massive hand closed around Izuku's right arm. The other closed around his left. And the Nomu pulled, it ripped Izuku's arms off. Clean separation. Meat, bone, uniform, torn away like pulling wings off a fly. Blood sprayed across the plaza tiles. Izuku's arms hit the ground 20 feet apart. The students screamed. Uraraka screamed. Even Bakugo flinched. The Nomu stood there, holding nothing, staring at the armless boy in front of it with blank, engineered eyes. Izuku looked down at where his arms used to be. He looked at the stumps. Blood was pumping out. His sleeves were ragged. His coat was ruined. He started laughing. Full, genuine, echoing laughter that bounced off the walls of the USJ and filled the entire facility. He threw his head back and laughed with his whole body, and it was the most terrifying sound anyone in that building had ever heard. "Oh, that's wonderful," he was cackling. Tears of blood were streaming down his face. "You ripped my arms off. Nobody's done that in at least 200 years. Oh, I like you." The Nomu tilted its head. Izuku's arms were already growing back. Bone first. White and glistening, extending from the stumps like time-lapse footage of a plant growing. Then muscle, wrapping around the bone in red and pink layers. Then skin, pale and smooth, spreading over the new flesh. Fingers last, index, middle, ring, pinky, thumb, flexing, cracking, good as new. 5 seconds. Both arms, complete regeneration. Izuku flexed his new fingers, cracked his knuckles, and grinned at the Nomu. My turn. He punched the Nomu in the face. The creature slid backward 10 meters, its feet carving trenches in the tile floor. Its shock absorption, its engineered defense against All Might's punches, activated, dispersing the kinetic energy. Izuku felt it. The punch had been absorbed. Shock absorption, huh? He tilted his head. Cute. But here's the thing. That works on punches. He raised his hand. His shadow expanded. It doesn't work on dogs. Baskerville rose from the floor. The hound erupted from Izuku's shadow like a geyser of black fire and teeth, its massive body filling the central plaza. It was bigger than before, larger, angrier, its eyes brighter, its jaws wider. It looked at the Nomu the way a wolf looks at a rabbit, and it lunged. The Nomu tried to fight. It punched Baskerville's jaw. The shock absorption did nothing because Baskerville wasn't physical in the traditional sense. It was shadow and soul and hunger. And the punch passed through the dark fur like a fist through smoke. Baskerville's jaws closed around the Nomu. The creature struggled. Its regeneration kicked in, healing the damage even as Baskerville's teeth tore through its flesh. But Baskerville wasn't trying to eat the body. It was dragging the Nomu into the shadow, into Izuku's shadow, into the dimension where 3 million consumed souls lived in eternal darkness. The Nomu's regeneration meant nothing in there. There was no physical body to regenerate. There was only the void and the voices and the dark and the hound. The Nomu sank into the shadow like a stone into tar. Its hands reached upward, grasping at air, and then they too were gone. The shadow settled. The plaza was quiet. Izuku stood alone in the center of 50-plus groaning villains and a pool of blood that used to be the Nomu. He adjusted his glasses. He fixed his coat. He looked at Shigaraki. Shigaraki had stopped scratching his neck. His hands were at his sides. His eyes were wide behind the severed hand that served as his mask. "What are you?" he whispered. Izuku tipped his hat. "A real vampire." Shigaraki stared. His brain, already unstable, was trying to process what he just watched. The Nomu, the anti-All Might weapon, the product of years of engineering and torture, had been swallowed by a shadow dog summoned by a high school student. "Kurogiri," Shigaraki said. His voice was very calm. "We're leaving." But Shigaraki, the mission is dead! The Nomu is dead! Get us out of here before that thing eats me too! Kurogiri's warp gate opened. Shigaraki stepped through. Before Kurogiri followed, he paused, his yellow eyes studying Izuku through the mist. "Izuku Midoriya," Kurogiri said. "We'll remember that name." "You better," Izuku said. "It's going to be the last thing a lot of people hear." Kurogiri vanished. The portal closed, the USJ fell silent. Then, from the top of the stairs, a sound. The massive doors bursting open as All Might arrived, flanked by pro-heroes, ready for war. He stopped. He took in the scene. 50 villains on the ground. No Nomu, no Shigaraki, no immediate threat. Just Izuku Midoriya standing in the middle of it all. Hands in his pockets, humming the Adventure Time theme song, All Might's skeletal form. He'd burned through his time limit on the way there, slumped against the doorframe. "Am I too late again?" he asked. Izuku glanced back. "Story of your life, Blondie." The aftermath of the USJ attack was a mess. The media called it a coordinated villain assault on UA's most promising class. The police called it a security breach. Recovery Girl called it a paperwork nightmare. Aizawa, who had sustained injuries fighting the mob villains, broken arm, lacerations, orbital fracture, called it a failure of the school's security protocols, and then went to sleep. What nobody called it, publicly, was what it actually was. A one-man demolition job by a first-year student who had single-handedly defeated a bioengineered weapon designed to kill the #1 hero. Nezu called Izuku to his office the day after the attack. The principal's office was neat, organized, and smelled like Earl Grey. Nezu sat behind his desk on a stack of cushions, his beady eyes bright with intelligence that bordered on terrifying. Izuku sat across from him, slouched, legs crossed, hat on. "Tea?" Nezu offered. "I drink blood. I have O negative in the staff refrigerator. Recovery Girl keeps it for transfusions." Izuku paused. Then he laughed. "Okay, I like you." Nezu poured himself tea and slid a bag of medical-grade blood across the desk. Izuku bit the corner and drank. It was cold, which was far from ideal, but the gesture earned Nezu a degree of respect. "You're extraordinary, Midoriya," Nezu said. "And I don't say that lightly. I've seen hundreds of students pass through this school, heroes, villains, everything in between. But I've never seen anything like you. Because there's never been anything like me. True. Nezu sipped his tea. Which presents a problem. For who? For everyone who isn't you. Nezu set his cup down. The Hero Commission is asking questions. The police are asking questions. Several pro-heroes have expressed concern about a student with abilities that can't be classified, quantified, or countered. Concern, Izuku repeated. You mean fear? Yes. Izuku finished the blood pack. He set it on the desk, leaned back, and looked at Nezu with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of empires. Let them be afraid, he said. Fear is the appropriate response. Nezu studied him. You know, most students in your position would try to reassure me. Tell me they're harmless. Promise they'll follow the rules. I'm not harmless. I won't always follow the rules, and I don't make promises I can't keep. Izuku leaned forward. But I will tell you this. I'm not here to hurt people. I'm here because there's a part of me, a small, stubborn, broccoli-haired part, that still wants to be a hero. And I'm going to do it my way. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to try and stop me. He stood, tipped his hat, and walked toward the door. Midoriya, Nezu called after him. Izuku paused. Welcome to UA. The sports festival was announced 2 weeks later. UA's annual event, broadcast nationally, watched by millions, scouted by every hero agency in Japan. For most students, it was the chance of a lifetime. A stage to show what they could do. For Izuku, it was Tuesday. I'm going to treat this the way I treat everything, he told Uraraka over lunch in the cafeteria. I'm going to show up, be incredible, and then leave before anyone can ask me questions. She stole one of his fries. He let her. He'd been letting her do things like that more often lately, and neither of them commented on it. You know, she said, chewing, most people are nervous about the sports festival. Most people can't regenerate from a headshot. Fair. She stole another fry. Are you going to hold back at all? Why would I? Because if you go full, you know, she gestured vaguely at all of him, you might actually give Endeavor a heart attack. He's going to be watching from the stands. Fantastic. I love an audience. She shook her head, smiling. You're impossible. Impossibly handsome. Impossibly insane. Those aren't mutually exclusive. She laughed. He watched her laugh. The fluorescent cafeteria lights caught her hair, that, and for a fraction of a second, something in his chest, something old and tired and not entirely human, felt warm. He looked away. Eat your lunch, round face. Stop calling me that. Make me. She reached across the table and flicked his forehead. He pretended it hurt. She knew it didn't. They both smiled. From 2 tables over, Kirishima nudged Kaminari. Dude, is the terrifying vampire boy flirting? I think so. I don't know what flirting looks like when one person could literally eat the other person's soul. That's valid. The sports festival arrived. The stadium was packed. 80,000 people in the stands, millions more watching on screens across the country. Every hero agency in Japan had scouts in the VIP sections. Endeavor, the number 2 hero, a walking furnace of flame and bad parenting, sat in the front row, his fire beard crackling with anticipation. Midnight, serving as referee, called the first-year students onto the field. Class 1A emerged from the tunnel alongside students from classes 1B, 1C, and the support and general studies departments. Izuku walked out in his gym uniform, trench coat draped over his shoulders, hat on, glasses glinting in the stadium lights. The crowd murmured. Camera flashes popped. A reporter in the press box leaned over to her colleague. That's him. The kid from the USJ, Midoriya. The one who supposedly ate a villain? Ate a bioweapon, actually. The villain he just shot. What is he? 15. Where does a 15-year-old get a... Nobody knows. His quirk isn't registered. It's listed as undetermined. Undetermined? In this day and age? I know. The first event was announced, an obstacle race around the perimeter of the stadium grounds. All students compete. No rules except don't leave the course. Midnight's whip cracked. Start! 200 students surged forward, cramming into the narrow exit tunnel, pushing, shoving, fighting for position. Todoroki moved first. A wave of ice shot from his right side, freezing the ground beneath the students' feet. Dozens slipped, fell, were trapped. Todoroki ran forward on the ice, smooth and controlled, taking an immediate lead. Bakugo blasted himself over the crowd, flying on explosive propulsion, refusing to be slowed. Izuku sighed. He stepped into his shadow and disappeared. He reappeared at the first obstacle, a field of massive robot sentries, the same models from the entrance exam. 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers, lined up like a mechanical army. Izuku was already past the starting tunnel. He was 100 meters ahead of second place. The crowd went silent, then exploded. Where did he go? He teleported. Present Meek's voice shook the stadium. Izuku Midoriya just bypassed the entire starting rush, and he's already at the first obstacle. Todoroki, still running, saw Izuku ahead of him and felt something cold that had nothing to do with his ice. The robots turned toward Izuku. He looked up at them. There were dozens. Big ones. He pulled the console. 15 seconds. 15 shots. 15 robots, each with a smoking hole through its central processing unit. He didn't stop walking. The second obstacle was a canyon, a massive gap in the earth with platforms suspended by cables. Students had to cross using whatever means they had. Izuku walked to the edge, looked down, and stepped off. He fell into shadow and came out of the shadow on the other side. Present Mike had given up on coherent commentary. He was just making sounds. The final obstacle was a minefield. Actual mines buried in the ground. They weren't lethal, just concussive, designed to knock students back and slow progress. Izuku walked across the minefield. Mines detonated under his feet. Explosions rocked the ground. Smoke and dirt and force hit him from every direction. He walked through all of it. Every step set off another mine. Every explosion did nothing. He emerged from the other side with his coat slightly dusty and his grin firmly in place. He crossed the finish line first. 3 minutes and 12 seconds. A new sports festival record. Second place, Todoroki, arrived 45 seconds later. The crowd was on its feet. Not cheering, exactly. More like experiencing a collective hallucination and trying to figure out if what they'd just seen was real. First place, Present Mike screamed. Izuku Midoriya! Time, 3 minutes and 12 seconds. That's faster than some pro heroes could do it. Izuku stood at the finish line, pulled out his phone, and tweeted, Sports Festival Obstacle Race, first place. Speed walked it. Black Air Force energy. It went viral in 4 minutes. The second event was the cavalry battle. Teams of 4, riders and horses, headbands worth points based on placement. First place, Izuku, wore a headband worth 10 million points, making him the target of every other team. The catch was that Izuku needed a team. He stood in the center of the field while other students scrambled to form groups. Nobody approached him, not because they didn't want the 10 million points on their side, but because standing next to Izuku Midoriya felt like standing next to a natural disaster that happened to have a sense of humor. Uraraka walked up first. I'll be on your team, she said. You sure? I'm going to make this weird. Everything you do is weird. I'm used to it. Tokoyami joined next. The bird-headed boy with the shadow quirk approached with quiet confidence. His dark shadow rippled excitedly. It could sense Izuku's darkness, and it was drawn to it like a moth to a flame. Your shadow, Tokoyami said. It's deep. You have no idea. Momo Yaoyorozu completed the team. The vice president of Class 1A was brilliant, analytical, and practical enough to recognize that being on the winning team was worth the existential crisis. I'll create support equipment, she said. Shields, barriers, whatever we need. You won't need them, Izuku said, but I appreciate the initiative. The cavalry battle started. Every team charged Izuku's team. Bakugo's team, Bakugo, Kirishima, Sero, Ashido, led the charge. Bakugo riding on top, palms blazing, murder in his eyes. Todoroki's team flanked from the left, ice spreading across the ground to restrict movement. A team from Class 1B attacked from behind. Izuku riding on the shoulders of his team, Uraraka reducing his gravity to near zero, making him light as air, looked at the converging forces and smiled. You know what the best part of being a target is? He raised his hand. Everyone comes to you. Shadow erupted from beneath his team. Not Baskerville, something smaller. Shadow hands. Dozens of them, shooting up from the ground like a garden of darkness, grabbing ankles, tripping runners, catching headbands and pulling. Bakugo's team stumbled as shadow hands grabbed Kirishima's feet. Bakugo launched himself off his team with an explosion, flying directly at Izuku, hand outstretched for the headband. Izuku leaned back casually, letting Bakugo's fingers miss by an inch. Close, Izuku said. Damn you. Izuku flicked Bakugo's forehead in midair, while Bakugo was flying at him with explosive force. Izuku flicked him between the eyes with one finger. Bakugo crashed to the ground, not from the flick, from the sheer disrespect disrupting his concentration. He hit the dirt, rolled, and screamed at the sky. Todoroki's ice reached Izuku's team. It climbed up their legs, trying to freeze them in place. Izuku's shadow melted the ice. Not with heat. With absence. The shadow consumed the ice like darkness consuming light, and it didn't even slow them down. "That's a neat trick," Izuku called to Todoroki across the battlefield. "Want to see mine?" Shadow tendrils shot from beneath his team, racing across the ground, and snatched 3 headbands from 3 separate teams in 2 seconds. The cavalry battle lasted 15 minutes. Izuku's team finished first. They didn't just win, they held the 10 million points plus every headband they'd stolen, ending with a total score so high that the display board had to resize its font. Second place, Todoroki's team, who'd managed to hold on to their own headband through strategic ice walls and Todoroki's raw power. Third place, Bakugo's team, because Bakugo had stolen 3 headbands through sheer fury and determination after getting flicked in the face. Fourth place, a Class 1B team that had survived by hiding. The tournament bracket was set, one-on-one fights, single elimination. This was what the crowd had been waiting for. Izuku looked at the bracket and found his first opponent, Hitoshi Shinso, a general studies student with a brainwashing quirk. Izuku said. "This should take about 10 seconds. It took 8. Shinso's quirk activated through verbal response. If someone answered his question, he could take control of their mind. Simple. Effective. It had gotten him through the cavalry battle against less prepared opponents. He stood across from Izuku in the arena, trying to look confident. "You think you're so special, don't you?" Shinso said. "Just because you have a powerful quirk." "I don't have a quirk," Izuku said. Shinso's power latched on. Izuku had responded. The brainwashing should have worked. Izuku felt it. A pressure in his mind, a fog trying to settle over his consciousness. 3 million souls screamed it away. The fog didn't just dissipate. It shattered. The backlash hit Shinso like a psychic slap. He staggered, nose bleeding, eyes wide. "What? How?" "You tried to brainwash a hive mind of 3 million people," Izuku said, walking forward. "That's like trying to hypnotize an ocean." He grabbed the front of Shinso's shirt, lifted him off the ground with one hand, and walked to the edge of the arena. "I respect the attempt." He set Shinso down outside the bounds. Gently. "You've got guts, kid. Work on the execution." Shinso stared at him from the ground, bleeding and bewildered, and despite everything, despite the loss, despite the humiliation, a small part of him thought, he didn't hurt me. He could have. But he didn't. Izuku's next fight was against Ibara Shiozaki, a girl from Class 1B with vine-like hair that she could control and extend. She was skilled, disciplined, and she immediately launched a cage of vines around Izuku to immobilize him. Izuku dissolved into shadow, reformed behind her, and tapped her on the shoulder. Boo. She spun, whipping vines. He caught them, pulled her forward off balance, and pushed her gently out of bounds. "Good vines," he said. Very botanical. The crowd was starting to notice a pattern. Izuku wasn't fighting. He was performing. Every match was a show, not a test of skill, but a demonstration of the gap between himself and everyone else. The semifinals. Izuku versus Ida. Ida was fast. His engine quirk let him accelerate to incredible speeds, and he'd been working on a move, Recipro Burst, that temporarily boosted his speed to a level that could blitz most opponents. The match started. Ida immediately activated Recipro Burst and charged at blinding speed, aiming to push Izuku out of bounds before he could react. He hit Izuku dead center. Full speed. Maximum force, Izuku didn't move. Ida's engines stalled on impact. The momentum transferred into Izuku's body and just stopped, like hitting a wall, like hitting something so heavy, so dense, so fundamentally immovable that the concept of force became irrelevant. Ida's engine sputtered. He looked up at Izuku, who hadn't moved an inch. "Good speed," Izuku said. "Wrong target." He picked Ida up by the back of his gym uniform, walked to the edge, and placed him outside the bounds like he was putting a toy on a shelf. "Izuku Midoriya advances to the finals!" Present Mick screamed. "And folks, I don't know if advances is the right word. He's been strolling through this tournament like it's a park." The finals, Izuku Midoriya versus Shoto Todoroki. This was the match the crowd wanted. Todoroki was the golden child, son of Endeavor, wielder of both ice and fire, the other dominant force in Class 1A. He was cold, focused, and powerful in a way that most pros couldn't match. But he only used his ice. The fire, his left side, his father's power, stayed dormant. a personal rebellion, a wound that hadn't healed. The arena was repaired from the previous matches. The crowd was at fever pitch. Every camera in the stadium was pointed at the two finalists. Todoroki stood on one side, ice already forming at his feet, his heterochromatic eyes, one gray, one turquoise, locked on Izuku. Izuku stood on the other side, hands in his coat pockets, hat tilted forward, grinning. "So," Izuku said, "daddy issues and an ice complex. This should be therapeutic." Todoroki's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're only using half your power because you're mad at your old man, and honestly, valid, he seems like a tool, but you're handicapping yourself in the finals of a national tournament because of family drama, and that's just sad. Shut up. Make me." Todoroki attacked. A glacier, an actual glacier. A wall of ice that erupted from his right side and covered the entire arena, spreading forward in a wave that was taller than the stadium walls and colder than anything nature could produce. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Endeavor in the stands gripped the armrest of his seat hard enough to melt it. The ice swallowed Izuku, covered him completely. A mountain of frozen water, solid and absolute. Todoroki stood at the edge of his glacier, breath misting in the sudden cold. The arena was silent. "It's over," he said quietly. The ice turned red. It started at the center, where Izuku was buried, and spread outward. Deep arterial red, like blood was flowing through the ice itself. Cracks appeared, racing across the frozen surface. The temperature changed. The cold became something else, something unnatural, something that made people in the front rows lean back in their seats. The glacier shattered. Not melted. Shattered. A million pieces of blood-red ice exploded outward in every direction. The force was concussive. Todoroki shielded his face as fragments peppered his arms and chest. Izuku walked out of the ruins of the glacier. He was lighting a cigarette. Where he got the cigarette was anyone's guess. He lit it with a flame that came from his fingertip. A trick, nothing more. And took a long drag. Smoke curled around his face. "Ice and fire," he said, exhaling. "What are you, a Katy Perry song?" The crowd erupted, half in laughter, half in disbelief. A woman in the third row was crying for reasons she couldn't explain. Todoroki attacked again. Rapid-fire ice, spears, walls, waves, throwing everything he had with his right side. He was fast, he was skilled. Every attack was precise and devastating. Izuku walked through all of it. Ice hit him and broke. Ice surrounded him and shattered. A spear of ice punched through his chest, threw it out the back, and he kept walking. The hole closed behind him before Todoroki could process what he'd seen. "You impaled me," Izuku said, looking down at the closing wound. "That's a new one. Usually people go for the head." Todoroki's ice was running out. His right side was frosting over, the cold feeding back into his own body, chilling him from the inside. Hypothermia was setting in. He was slowing down, and Izuku was still walking. "Use your fire," Izuku said. Todoroki flinched. "What? Your fire, your other half. The part you're pretending doesn't exist because your daddy used it to hurt people." Izuku stopped 5 meters from Todoroki. His red eyes were steady. "I get it. Trust me, I get family trauma. I've been alive long enough to have daddy issues with people who've been dead for centuries. But that fire isn't his, it's yours. And right now you're losing to me because you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back. I told you to shut up. Use your fire. It's his power. I won't. It's your power." Izuku's voice cracked across the arena like a gunshot. Not a yell, something deeper. Something that carried the weight of 400 years. "It's yours, Todoroki. It came from your body. It lives in your blood. Whatever he did to you, whatever he took from you, the fire is yours. And if you don't use it right now, I'm going to win this fight without even trying, and you're going to spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you just let yourself be whole." Silence. Todoroki stared at Izuku. The ice on his right side crackled. His left hand trembled. In the stands, Endeavor was on his feet. Todoroki's left side ignited. The fire erupted from him like a volcano, blasting upward and outward, melting the remaining ice in an instant. Heat waves distorted the air. The temperature in the stadium jumped 30 degrees. The crowd covered their faces. Todoroki stood in the center of the arena, half ice, half fire, both sides active for the first time in years. Tears were streaming down his face, one side evaporated by heat, the other freezing on his cheek. "There we go," Izuku said, grinning. Now we're talking. Todoroki hit him with everything, fire and ice together, a dual blast of opposing elements, spiraling around each other, converging on Izuku with the force of a natural disaster. The combined attack was devastating, the ground beneath it vaporized. The air screamed, the arena cratered. It hit Izuku dead on. The explosion was visible from outside the stadium, smoke filled the arena. Debris rained down. The crowd was on their feet, screaming, cheering, crying. When the smoke cleared, Izuku was standing in a crater. His coat was gone. His hat was gone. His shirt was burned away. His skin was charred on one side and frozen on the other, and he was regenerating in real time, burnt skin peeling away to reveal fresh skin underneath, frost melting and healing simultaneously. He stood there, bare-chested, regenerating, red eyes glowing, grinning from ear to ear. "That's what I'm talking about," he said. He moved, one step, shadow step. He was in front of Todoroki. His hand was on Todoroki's shoulder. "Good fight," Izuku said. He pushed. Todoroki flew out of bounds. Not violently, not cruelly. With just enough force to end it cleanly. He landed on the grass outside the arena, on his back, staring at the sky. He'd lost. But something else had happened. Something that had nothing to do with winning or losing. He was using his fire. For the first time in years, both sides of him were alive. "Izuku Midoriya wins," Present Mix screamed. "Izuku Midoriya is the champion of the UA Sports Festival." The crowd erupted. 80,000 people on their feet. The sound was physical, a wall of noise that hit like a wave. Izuku stood in the destroyed arena, shirtless, regenerating, and completely unbothered. He manifested his hat from shadow and put it back on. "Easy," he said. The medal ceremony happened. Izuku stood on the podium and accepted the gold from All Might, who was beaming with complicated pride. "You did something incredible out there, young Midoriya," All Might said, draping the medal around his neck. "Not just the fighting," what you said to young Todoroki. "Don't read into it," Izuku said. "I just wanted a good fight." All Might smiled. "Sure you did." Izuku posted a selfie with the gold medal. Caption, "First place. The rest of you were just here for the scenery. The Crimson Fucker. 200,000 likes. Trending #1 in Japan. Several hero agencies sent internship offers within the hour." Todoroki approached Izuku after the ceremony. He looked different. Not just physically, though the burns and frost on his body were still healing. He looked lighter, like something heavy had been put down. "Midoriya." "Todoroki, what you said about the fire." "What about it?" Todoroki looked at him for a long moment. "Thank you." Izuku tipped his hat. "Don't mention it. Seriously, if anyone asks, I was just talking trash. I have a reputation." The ghost of a smile crossed Todoroki's face. "Sure." He walked away. Izuku watched him go. "You're softer than you pretend to be," Uraraka said, appearing at his side. "I'm a monster who eats people's souls." "Uh-huh. A monster who just spent 2 minutes giving his opponent a motivational speech about self-acceptance. Tactical. If he used both powers, the fight would be more entertaining. You literally made him cry. Happy tears count differently." She shook her head. She was smiling. She was always smiling around him, and he was starting to notice it the way you notice the sun. It was just always there, warm and present. "Congratulations, vampire boy," she said. "You're the champion." "Was there ever any doubt?" "No," she admitted, which is what makes it boring. "Excuse me? I blew up a glacier, regenerated from third-degree burns and frostbite simultaneously, and gave an existentially challenged teenager therapy mid-combat. That is not boring." She laughed, full, genuine, head-tilted back laughter that made his dead heart do something it had no business doing. "Okay," she said. "It wasn't boring." They walked back to the locker rooms together. His shadow, trailing behind them, had calmed for the first time all day. It didn't move. It didn't stir. It was just a shadow. Funny how that worked. 2 weeks after the sports festival, internship assignments went out. Most students paired with hero agencies for 1-week work studies, learning the ropes, patrolling, studying under professionals. Izuku was supposed to intern with the pro-hero Best Jeanist, who had requested him specifically. "I can fix that boy's fashion sense if it kills me." Izuku took one look at the assignment and tweeted, "I'd rather walk into a church." He ended up going to the Hosu City District, ostensibly under the supervision of the pro-hero Manuel, who was a water-themed hero with a mild personality and the survival instincts to immediately give Izuku space. "Just don't kill anyone," Manuel said on the first day. "I make no promises, please." Fine, moderate promises. Hosu City was a place. Medium-sized, urban, decent ramen. The kind of city where heroes patrolled and villains caused trouble and everything operated within the understood parameters of superhuman society until it didn't. 3 days into the internship, Izuku was walking down a side street at midnight because vampires don't sleep and patrol hours are for mortals when he heard it. Fighting. Close. An alley 3 blocks east, he was there in 2 seconds. The alley was narrow, lit by a single busted streetlight that flickered like a dying heartbeat. And in the yellow-orange stutter of that light, Izuku saw 2 things. First, Tenya Ida, on the ground. His arm was bleeding, his engines were stalled, his eyes were wide with pain and fury and something worse, helplessness. He had come to Hosu specifically for this, to find the villain who had crippled his brother, Tensei Ida, the pro-hero Ingenium. He'd come for revenge, and he'd found it, and it was killing him. Second, Stain, the hero killer. Chizome Akaguro, also known as Stain, stood over Ida with a sword in one hand and a knife in the other. He was lean, bandaged, covered in dried blood, his own and others. His eyes were bright with zealotry. His tongue was long and prehensile, and it tasted the air like a snake's. He'd already licked Ida's blood. His quirk, Blood Curdle, had activated, paralyzing Ida completely. The boy couldn't move. Could only watch as the blade came up. False hero. Stain hissed. Motivated by vengeance, not justice. You are everything wrong with this society. You don't deserve the name hero. The blade started to come down. Izuku dropped from the roof. He landed between Stain and Ida with the weight of something much heavier than a 15-year-old boy. The pavement cracked under his feet. His shadow spread across the alley floor like spilled ink. Stain froze. Izuku looked at Ida. Then at Stain. Hey, Ninja Turtle, Izuku said. Step away from the Sonic knockoff. Stain's eyes narrowed. He studied Izuku. The red eyes, the shadow, the coat, the complete absence of fear. Another false hero, Stain growled. Coming to save someone unworthy. First of all, I'm not a hero. I'm a nightmare with a student ID. Second of all, unworthy? You're a guy in bandages with a sword licking people in alleys. You're not exactly in a position to judge. Stain attacked. Fast. Incredibly fast. His sword came in at an angle designed to open Izuku's throat. It was the strike of a man who had killed dozens of professional heroes. Precise, brutal, and delivered with killing intent that most humans would fold under. The blade hit Izuku's neck and stopped, not because Izuku blocked it, because the blade hit his skin and could not cut through it. The edge pressed against his throat and went no further. Like pressing a knife against a steel beam, Stain's eyes widened. Yeah, Izuku said. That's not gonna work. He backhanded Stain. The hero killer flew sideways, hit the alley wall, cratered the brick, and dropped to the ground. Fast recovery. Stain was on his feet in a second, blood running from his mouth, but on his feet. What are you? Stain demanded. Getting asked that a lot lately. Short answer, I'm the scariest thing in this alley, and this alley has you in it. So that's saying something. Stain came again, faster this time. He threw the knife first, a distraction, then lunged with the sword, aiming for Izuku's heart. The knife embedded in Izuku's shoulder. Izuku ignored it. The sword punched through Izuku's chest. Through his ribcage, through his lung, and out his back. Stain drove it into the hilt. Izuku looked down at the sword sticking out of his chest. Ow, he said in a tone that suggested mild inconvenience. That's my favorite lung. He grabbed Stain's wrist, the one holding the sword, and squeezed. Bones creaked. Stain's grip faltered. Izuku pulled the sword out of his own chest. The wound closed behind it like water filling a hole. He tossed the sword aside. Now, Izuku said, you've been doing this whole hero-killer thing for a while. Killing heroes you don't think are pure enough, right? Purging the corruption? Very dramatic. Very edgy. Very I watched too many samurai movies as a kid. Stain snarled and licked his blade, the knife still bloody with Izuku's blood. Blood Curdle! Stain roared, his quirk activated. When Stain ingested someone's blood, he could paralyze them. Complete motor function shut down. It worked on everyone. Every hero, every villain, every person he'd ever fought. He ingested Izuku's blood. The effect was immediate, but not on Izuku. Stain's eyes went white, his body locked, not from his own quirk, from what lived inside Izuku's blood. 3 million souls. When Stain's quirk tried to process Izuku's blood, it didn't find one person's biological signature. It found 3 million. 3 million screaming, raging, terrified souls. The accumulated victims and consumed enemies of 400 years of vampiric existence. An entire Wallachian army. Soldiers from crusades, vampires, ghouls, monsters, humans. All of them in that blood, all at once, flooding into Stain's nervous system through his own quirk. Stain screamed. He dropped to his knees, clawing at his face. The voices were everywhere, in his ears, in his skull, behind his eyes. 1,000 years of war and death and blood compressed into a single sip. "Oh no," Izuku said, watching with genuine curiosity. "Yeah, that happens. You basically just drank the psychic equivalent of the entire Eastern European front. That's on you, buddy." Stain's screaming turned to whimpering. He curled into a ball on the alley floor, hands over his ears, rocking back and forth. Izuku walked over. He crouched down. He pulled the Kazol from his shadow and pressed the barrel against Stain's forehead. "You call yourself a killer?" Izuku said quietly. You've killed, 17 heroes? 18 in a few years of work?" He leaned in close. "I've killed more people than you've ever met. I've drained countries. I've eaten armies. I am the thing that the things you're afraid of are afraid of. And you're a cosplayer. A guy with a sword and an ideology playing at being scary in alleys." He pulled the Kazol back and flipped it in his hand. Then he brought the butt of the gun down on Stain's temple. The hero killer went limp. Out cold, Izuku stood up, dusted off his coat, and walked over to Ida. The paralysis from Stain's quirk was wearing off. Ida could move his fingers, his arms. He looked up at Izuku with eyes that were wet, not just from pain. "Midoriya?" Ida whispered. I'm sorry. I came here for revenge. I was selfish. I wasn't thinking like a hero. You were thinking like a brother," Izuku said. He offered his hand. "That's not the worst thing in the world." Ida took his hand. Izuku pulled him to his feet. "But let's get something straight," Izuku continued. "If you ever pull a stunt like this again, running off alone against a serial killer because of personal beef, I'm going to let you handle it yourself. And I think we both know how that ends." Ida swallowed. "It won't happen again." "Good. Now let's get out of here before the cops show up. I'm not dealing with paperwork. Paperwork is for mortals." He slung Ida's arm over his shoulder and helped him limp toward the main street. Behind them, Stain lay unconscious in the alley, his weapons scattered, his crusade broken. The police arrived 12 minutes later. Pro-heroes followed. Native, the hero Stain had attacked before Ida arrived, was found alive, badly wounded, 2 blocks away. Todoroki, who had been in Hosu as well and had seen Izuku's location shared through a group text, arrived minutes after the fight ended, breathless and ready to fight. He found Izuku sitting on a fire hydrant, eating a convenience store onigiri, watching the police tape off the alley. "I missed it," Todoroki said flatly, "by about 6 minutes. How bad was it?" "I let him stab me through the chest so he'd feel like he had a chance. Then he drank my blood and his brain broke." Todoroki processed this. "You let him stab you? Through the chest, to be sporting. And his brain broke. 3 million souls worth of psychic feedback. Turns out his quirk has a data limit." Todoroki sat down next to the fire hydrant. "I need to stop being surprised by the things you do. That would save us both a lot of time." The Stain incident was all over the news by morning. The hero killer, captured, unconscious, alive. The police credited the arrest to a collaborative effort by heroes in the Hosu district, which was technically true if you squinted hard enough. But the internet knew. Someone had been watching from a fire escape. Someone had a camera phone. Someone uploaded a video of Izuku Midoriya standing over the hero killer with a massive silver handgun pressed to the man's forehead, saying something the microphone couldn't quite pick up. The video got 20 million views in 8 hours. The Crimson Fucker tweeted, "Met a guy who thinks killing heroes makes him cool. Broke his brain. Literally. Get better heroes and better villains. # Hosu. Bored." 30 million impressions, 500,000 retweets. A meme format was born. Izuku's silhouette with the gun captioned with increasingly absurd things. The internet, for all its faults, recognized greatness when it saw it. Back at UA, things shifted. Izuku had been notable before. After Hosu, he was legendary. Students from other classes found excuses to walk past 1A's classroom. Hero agencies that had made offers before doubled them. News outlets requested interviews. Izuku declined everything. "I don't do interviews," he told Aizawa when the teacher relayed the requests. "Interviews are where personality goes to die." You have to do some level of public engagement, Aizawa said, rubbing his permanently tired eyes. The Hero Commission. The Hero Commission can read my Twitter. Aizawa stared at him. Your Twitter where you called Endeavor the world's angriest space heater? That's accurate and you know it. Aizawa opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, closed it. Get out of my office. I was never in your office. I was in your sleeping bag room. Get out! The dynamic in Class 1A had settled into something functional, if bizarre. The other students had learned to coexist with Izuku the way coastal towns coexist with the ocean, with respect, a healthy distance, and the understanding that he could destroy everything at any moment. Kirishima thought he was the manliest person alive, dead or undead. They got along. Kaminari was terrified of him, but also desperately wanted to be his friend. Izuku tolerated this with amusement. Jiro had figured out that her earphone jacks picked up weird frequencies around Izuku. Whispers, heartbeats that shouldn't exist, sounds from somewhere deep. She stopped listening after the third time. Tokoyami was drawn to Izuku's darkness. Dark Shadow, his quirk, was calmer and more powerful when Izuku was nearby. They trained together sometimes, in silence, in the shadows. It was the closest thing Izuku had to a peer relationship. Yaoyorozu was fascinated from an analytical perspective and kept trying to scientifically classify his abilities. Izuku let her try because her confusion was entertaining. Mineta tried to bond with him over their shared appreciation of the female form. Izuku hung him from a flagpole by his underwear. Bakugo was complicated. He hadn't challenged Izuku again since the quirk assessment. He trained harder than anyone. His grades were top of the class. His combat skills improved daily. But he didn't approach Izuku, and Izuku didn't approach him, and between them existed a silence that the rest of the class tiptoed around. Until one evening, after classes, when Bakugo found Izuku on the roof. Izuku was sitting on the edge, legs dangling over a 4-story drop, watching the sunset. His hat was off, his glasses were off. In the orange light, with his red eyes and pale skin, he looked less like a student and more like a painting of something old and lonely. Oi, Bakugo said. Bakugo. How? How what? How are you this strong? Bakugo's voice was tight, controlled. He wasn't yelling. That was more alarming than if he had been. I've trained every day since I was 4. I've pushed myself past every limit that I was the best at everything. Always. And then you show up, some dead guy in a coat, and nothing I've done matters. Izuku didn't look at him. He watched the sunset. You want the honest answer? I want an answer. I'm 400 years old. I've fought in wars you've never heard of. I've killed things that would make your worst nightmares look like Saturday morning cartoons. The gap between us isn't talent and it isn't effort. It's time. I've had 4 centuries to become what I am. You've had 15 years. He paused. But here's the thing, Bakugo. 15 years from now, 30 years, 50, you'll be dead. Old age or a fight or bad luck. That's the deal for humans. You get a window, and whatever you build in that window is all you leave behind. He finally turned and looked at Bakugo. Red eyes, ancient and steady. I'll be here forever. Come here. And I'll still remember the kid with the explosion hands who never stopped trying to close a gap he couldn't close. That's worth something. It's worth more than you think. Bakugo stared at him. His jaw worked. His hands clenched and unclenched. I'm still going to be number 1, Bakugo said. You might, among humans. I'm going to surpass you. You won't, but the attempt will be spectacular. Bakugo's eye twitched. For a moment, Izuku thought he might attack. Instead, Bakugo turned and walked toward the roof access door. I'm going to surpass you, he said again, quieter this time. The door closed behind him. Izuku watched the sunset finish. The sky went from orange to purple to black. Stars appeared. The shadows around him deepened and shifted. Comfortable, familiar. No, you won't, he murmured to the dark. But keep running. It makes the world more interesting. And Uraraka, Ochako Uraraka, who had 0 gravity powers and a round face and a laugh like a bell, had somehow become the person Izuku spent the most time with. Not because he sought her out, not because she forced herself on him, just because she was there, consistently, without agenda. She sat with him at lunch. She walked with him between classes. She asked him questions nobody else asked, not about his powers or his past, but about what he liked, what he thought about, what he watched. Adventure time, he told her one afternoon, sitting on the steps outside the dorm. It's the greatest piece of animated fiction ever created, and I will die on that hill. You can't die. Then I'll unlive on that hill. What's so great about it? It's a show about a kid and a dog having adventures in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and it's somehow the most emotionally resonant thing I've ever consumed, and I've consumed a lot of things. She wrinkled her nose. You mean blood? I mean blood, souls, a Nazi werewolf, several buildings, and a really questionable burrito from a gas station in 1987. You ate a gas station burrito? I contain multitudes. She pulled her knees up to her chest, smiling. The evening air was cool. The campus was quiet. Can I ask you something personal? She said. You can ask. Answering is a separate negotiation. Are you lonely? He looked at her. She wasn't flinching. She wasn't afraid of the answer. I have 3 million souls inside me, he said. I'm literally never alone. That's not what I asked. Silence. A long one. The kind that fills up with things people won't say. Sometimes, Izuku said quietly, sometimes the noise is the loneliest part. She didn't say anything. She scooted closer until their shoulders were touching. She was warm, alive, present. He let her stay there. For what it's worth, she said, I don't think you're a monster. You've seen me eat a villain. I've also seen you save me, twice, and give Todoroki therapy, and help Ida when he was being an idiot, and hang Mineta from a flagpole, which honestly should qualify you for sainthood. He laughed. Actually laughed. The real one, not the Alucard one. You're something else, Roundface. Ochako. What? My name is Ochako. You could use it sometime. He looked at her. Brown eyes, warm, unbearably, impossibly warm. Ochako. She smiled. It was the kind of smile that could make a dead heart remember what beating felt like. See? Not so hard. She stood up, dusted off her skirt, and headed inside. At the door, she turned back. Good night, Izuku. His name, not Vampire Boy, not Midoriya. Izuku. Good night, Ochako. She disappeared inside. The door clicked shut. Izuku sat on the steps for a long time. His shadow was still. The night was quiet. Now 3 million souls rested silently inside him. And for the first time in 400 years, the silence didn't feel heavy. He sat there until dawn. The sky turned gray, then pink, then gold, and the campus woke up around him. Sprinklers hissing on, birds doing whatever birds do at 5 in the morning, the distant clang of the kitchen staff starting breakfast. Izuku watched all of it with the patience of something that had watched 10,000 dawns and would watch 10,000 more. Then, he went inside, drank 2 blood packs from the stash. Recovery Girl had started keeping in the common room fridge, labeled, Midoriya, do not touch. This means you, Kaminari. And tweeted, sunrises are overrated. They happen every day. That's not special. That's a schedule. 14,000 likes before first period. The weeks between the stain incident and the end of the first semester moved fast. Classes happened. Training happened. Midnight taught a lecture on hero law that Izuku slept through with his hat over his face. Present Mike taught English, which Izuku already spoke fluently, along with Romanian, German, Latin, Japanese, and a dead dialect of Wallachian that hadn't been spoken by a living person since the 15th century. Ectoplasm taught math. Izuku was fine at math. 400 years of existence meant he'd picked up calculus somewhere between the Napoleonic Wars and the invention of television. Cementos repaired the classroom walls 3 times in 2 weeks because Bakugo kept detonating things during combat exercises. Aizawa's eye bags developed eye bags. All Might continued teaching foundational hero studies with the energy of a man who was simultaneously proud of and exhausted by his students. Coughing blood into handkerchiefs between lessons and pretending nobody noticed. Izuku noticed. He always noticed. You're dying, Izuku said one afternoon, catching All Might alone in the teacher's lounge. The skeletal form, the hollow cheeks, the way his left side caved in where his stomach used to be. All Might flinched. I wouldn't say dying. Your body is eating itself. Your quirk is fading. You've got, an hour of muscle form per day? Less? Midoriya. I'm not judging. I've been dead. It's not that bad. Izuku leaned against the doorframe. But you should probably find your successor soon, before the clock runs out. All Might studied him, those sunken eyes, tired and blue, holding more weight than any human frame should carry. I found one, All Might said quietly. A boy in general studies, Shinso Hitoshi. He has the heart for it. Izuku raised an eyebrow. The brainwash kid? The one whose power bounced off me like a rubber ball? His quirk works on everyone except you, and his determination, the way he keeps fighting despite being overlooked, it reminds me of someone. If you say it reminds you of me, I'm leaving. It reminds me of you. I'm leaving. Izuku pushed off the doorframe and turned. Midoriya. He stopped. Thank you, All Might said, for being honest with me about the time. Izuku didn't turn around. Don't waste what you've got left, Blondie. The world still needs you, even if it's just for the smile. He walked away. All Might sat in the empty lounge, looking at his hands, skeletal, trembling, mortal, and for the first time in years felt something other than fear about his own decline. He felt peace. But that was a story for a different day, because final exams were coming and UA had plans. The announcement dropped on a Monday. Aizawa stood at the front of the classroom looking like he'd slept negative hours and delivered the news with all the enthusiasm of a man reading his own obituary. Practical final exams. You'll be paired up and pitted against a teacher in a combat scenario. The objective, either capture the teacher using these specialized cuffs or escape through the designated gate within the time limit. That's it. Simple. Simple, Kaminari repeated, his voice cracking. We're fighting teachers. Pro-heroes. How is that simple? I said simple. I didn't say easy. Aizawa pulled up the matchup screen. Teams are as follows. The screen lit up. Todoroki and Yaoyorozu versus Aizawa. Bakugo and Kirishima versus Cementos. Uraraka and Ashido versus 13. Kaminari and Jiro versus Present Mike, Ida and Ojiro versus Power Loader, Asui and Tokoyami versus Ectoplasm, Mineta and Sero versus Midnight, Sato and Koda versus Snipe, Shoji and Hagakure versus All Might. And at the bottom of the list, alone unpaired, Izuku Midoriya versus All Might. The classroom went dead quiet. Wait, Kaminari said, squinting at the screen. Shoji and Hagakure are also against All Might? Different rounds, Aizawa said. Shoji and Hagakure go first. Then Midoriya. Alone? Ida asked, his glasses catching the light. Is that regulation? One student against All Might without a partner? We considered pairing him, Aizawa said. He paused, his eye twitched. We couldn't find anyone who'd make a difference. A beat of silence. Besides, Aizawa continued, we discussed it with All Might. He requested the solo matchup personally. Every head turned to look at Izuku. He was in the back row, hat over his face, feet on the desk, apparently asleep. Midoriya, Aizawa said. Are you listening? All Might. Solo. Capture or escape. His voice came from under the hat, lazy and amused. Heard every word, sounds like a date. It's an exam. Everything's an exam if you're boring enough. Aizawa's left eye twitched so hard the students in the front row could hear it. Final exam is in 2 weeks. Train accordingly. Class dismissed. The next 2 weeks were the most intense training period Class 1A had experienced. Teams strategized, practiced, argued, and prepared for their assigned opponents with the kind of desperate focus that only comes from facing professionals. Izuku trained by sitting on the roof watching anime on his phone and occasionally manifesting the Kasol to spin it on his finger. You're not training, Uraraka observed, finding him up there on a Thursday evening. She'd been working with Ashido on their strategy against 13, practicing gravity manipulation in tandem with Ashido's acid to create environmental chaos that could box the rescue hero in. I've been training for 400 years, Izuku said. I think I've got the basics down. She sat next to him, close enough that their arms brushed. She'd started doing that more, sitting in his space, occupying the margins of him. He let her. He'd stopped pretending he didn't like it. Are you worried? She asked. About fighting All Might? The man has one stomach, one lung, and about 45 minutes of power left in his entire body. I have 3 million souls, and I once used a city as a weapon. What part of this should worry me? The part where he's All Might. Izuku turned his head. She was looking at him with those brown eyes, steady and warm. He's the symbol of peace, Izuku. He's not just strong, he means something to people. When you fight him, when you beat him, people are going to see that. They're going to see the symbol go down. And I'm not saying you shouldn't win. I'm saying be kind about it. He stared at her for a long moment. When did you get wise? I've always been wise. You were just too busy being dramatic to notice. He laughed. She smiled. The evening wind blew her hair across her face, and she tucked it behind her ear. And the gesture was so mundane, so human, so alive that something in Izuku's chest ached in a way that regeneration couldn't fix. "I'll be kind," he said, "as kind as I know how to be." "That's all I'm asking." She bumped his shoulder with hers. He bumped back. They sat there until the stars came out, and he told her about constellations that had shifted in the 4 centuries he'd been watching them, and she told him about her parents' construction company and how she'd become a hero to give them an easier life. And neither of them acknowledged that they were sharing the kinds of things people only share when they trust someone completely. Exam day. The practical finals took place across multiple training grounds, each modified for the specific teacher-student matchup. Battles happened simultaneously across campus. The faculty monitored from the main building. Todoroki and Yaoyorozu took on Aizawa in an urban maze. Aizawa erased Todoroki's quirk on sight and used his capture scarf to create a web of traps across the narrow streets. Yaoyorozu's plan, which she'd prepared in a 30-page strategy document, carried them through. She created flash grenades to blind Aizawa's erasure, Russian nesting dolls of decoys, and a smoke screen dense enough to provide cover while Todoroki flanked with ice. They captured him with 6 minutes left on the clock. Aizawa, hanging from his own scarf wrapped around a lamppost, said, "Adequate," which from Aizawa was the equivalent of a standing ovation. Bakugo and Kirishima fought Cementos in a construction yard. Cementos raised wall after wall, creating an ever-changing labyrinth of concrete. Bakugo blasted through 7 walls in succession, Kirishima hardening his entire body to tank the debris, and the two of them hit Cementos from both sides with a pincer attack that was as graceless as it was effective. Bakugo cuffed Cementos with a snarl that suggested he was imagining someone else's face on every wall he destroyed. Uraraka and Ashido versus 13 went sideways in the best way. 13's black hole quirk, a vortex that disintegrated matter, made direct assault suicidal. Uraraka's plan was elegant. She reduced the gravity on every piece of loose debris in the training ground. Ashido dissolved the supports holding up the overhead structure, and together, they dropped the entire ceiling on 13 in a slow-motion avalanche of zero-gravity rubble that buried the hero without hurting them. They reached the gate with 4 minutes to spare. Uraraka pumped her fist. Ashido did a victory dance. In the monitoring room, Midnight applauded. Other matches played out across campus. Kaminari overloaded present mic speakers. Ida's speed carried him and Ojiro to their gate with surgical precision. Tokoyami's Dark Shadow, supercharged by training sessions with Izuku, overwhelmed 3 of Ectoplasm's clones. Mineta and Sero lost to Midnight. Nobody was surprised. And then it was time. Training Ground Gamma, the largest facility on campus, an industrial simulation zone, towering buildings, steel catwalks, narrow alleys, wide plazas. It covered 6 city blocks. The exit gate was on the far north end, half a kilometer from the starting position. All Might stood in the center of the training ground, arms crossed, in his muscle form, 220 pounds of hero. The afternoon sun hit his blonde hair, his blue and red suit, his smile, always the smile, locked in place like armor. He'd been briefed. He knew what Izuku could do. He'd watched every recording and read every report, studied every incident. He'd prepared for this the way he'd once prepared for his fight against All for One, with complete seriousness. The earpiece in his right ear crackled. Nezu's voice, calm and precise. The objective for the student is to reach the exit gate or capture the teacher. Time limit, 30 minutes. All Might. The student has been informed that you will be fighting at full output. I understand, All Might said. Do you? Nezu asked. Because I want to be clear. We are not asking you to hold back. We are asking you to use everything you have. All Might's smile didn't waver, but something behind his eyes shifted. I understand, Principal. Good. Begin in 60 seconds. On the south end of the training ground, Izuku Midoriya stepped onto the field. Red coat, orange glasses, wide-brimmed hat, hands in his pockets. He looked at the skyline of fake buildings stretching out before him, the maze of streets and alleys between him and the gate, and the distant figure of All Might standing in the center like a lighthouse. He could shadow step to the gate in 2 seconds. Walk through the buildings like they weren't there. Go around, above, below. A dozen ways to pass the exam without fighting. He started walking toward All Might. Because Izuku Midoriya had never taken the easy way out of anything, and he wasn't about to start with the most interesting fight he'd been offered since the 15th century. Begin! The speakers announced. All Might moved. The ground beneath his feet cratered as he launched forward. The air compressed ahead of him, forming a visible shockwave. He covered the 400 meters between them in under 3 seconds. A blur of blue and red and gold. Fist drawn back, committed to ending this fast and hard and overwhelming, he swung a Detroit smash. Full power. The punch that had changed weather patterns. The punch that had ended fights with villains who measured their strength in city blocks. It connected with Izuku's open palm. The shockwave blew outward. Windows shattered for 3 blocks. The concrete beneath Izuku's feet spiderwebbed into a crater 10 meters wide. The buildings on either side of the street leaned away from the impact, their steel frames groaning. Izuku held the fist. His arm hadn't moved. His feet hadn't shifted. He stood in the crater, one hand wrapped around All Might's massive knuckles, his coat billowing in the aftershock, grinning. "That's your opener?" Izuku said. "Solid 6 out of 10. Good form. Nice follow-through. But you pulled it." All Might's eyes widened. He hadn't pulled it. "Let me show you how it's done." Izuku's free hand came up. Not a punch, an open palm strike, that aimed at All Might's center mass. All Might saw it coming, broke free of the grip, and crossed his arms in a guard. The strike hit his guard. All Might left the ground. He flew backward through a building, through the concrete wall, through the interior, out the other side, and hit the street on the far end hard enough to bounce. He rolled, recovered, and found his footing, skidding to a stop on cracked asphalt. His arms ached. Both of them. From a single palm strike, he looked up. Izuku was walking through the hole in the building, stepping over rubble with casual grace, hands already back in his pockets. "You know," Izuku said, emerging onto the street, "I've been looking forward to this. I've fought wars, armies, monsters, gods, but I've never fought a man who represented hope itself. That's a first for me. And at my age, firsts are rare." All Might straightened, his smile locked into place. Not the performance smile, the real one, the one that said, "I will face this, whatever it is." "Young Midoriya," All Might said, "I won't pretend I can beat you. Smart. But I can show you what it means to fight someone who will never give up." Izuku lowered his glasses, red eyes burned like embers in the afternoon light. "Now, that," he said, "is what I wanted to hear." All Might attacked. He came in fast and relentless, a combination of punches that would have leveled a city block. Detroit Smash, Nebraska Smash, Missouri Smash. Named attacks, full power strikes, each one connecting with Izuku's body with enough force to create individual shockwaves. The street around them disintegrated. Buildings collapsed. The training ground shook. Izuku took every single punch. He didn't dodge. He didn't block. He stood there, feet planted, and let All Might hit him. Each punch snapped his head back, cratered his chest, broke bones that knitted together before the next strike landed. Blood sprayed and evaporated, skin tore and regrew, his coat shredded and his shadow repaired it. He was smiling the entire time. "Good," Izuku said through a jaw that had been broken and healed mid-sentence. "Good. Keep going. I can feel that one." All Might threw a punch that connected with Izuku's temple hard enough to generate a sonic boom. Izuku's head snapped 90 degrees to the right. He turned it back slowly, vertebrae popping, and his grin had too many teeth. "Okay," Izuku said. "That one actually stung. You get a gold star." In the monitoring room, the faculty watched in absolute silence. The screen showed All Might, the symbol of peace, the strongest hero alive, unleashing everything he had on a teenage boy who was standing still and critiquing his technique. Nezu sipped his tea. His paw was steady this time. He'd accepted what he was watching. "He's not even trying to pass the exam," Midnight said. "He could walk to the gate right now." "He doesn't want to pass the exam," Nezu said. "He wants the fight." "Why?" "Because All Might asked him for it." On the ground, All Might was beginning to feel it. The strain. His time limit was burning fast. He'd been in muscle form for 20 minutes before the exam started, handling Shoji and Hagakure's match, and the remaining power was draining with every punch. His left side throbbed where his stomach used to be, but he kept swinging because he was All Might, and All Might did not stop. "You're slowing down," Izuku observed. "I've got plenty left," All Might said, blood at the corner of his mouth through another punch. Izuku caught it. "No, you don't." Izuku's voice was different now, quieter. The humor was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something that sounded almost like respect. "You've been running on fumes for years. Every fight costs you more than the last, and you're standing here throwing your best at someone you know you can't beat, because that's who you are. He released All Might's fist. I've met kings and conquerors. I've fought warriors who were born in blood and raised in war, but I've never met anyone as stubborn as you. All Might's smile wavered. Just a fraction. That's what being a hero. I know what it is. I've been watching heroes my whole life. Both lives. Izuku reached up and took off his glasses. His red eyes, ancient and bright, looked at All Might with something that wasn't mockery. You're the real thing, All Might. The only real thing in a world full of costumes and catchphrases. And I want you to know, when the history books talk about this era, your name will be the one they remember. All Might stared at him. But this fight is over. Izuku moved. One step, shadow dark, faster than thought. His hand came up, flat open, and struck All Might on the side of the neck. A precise hit, the kind that Alucard had used on soldiers and generals and kings across centuries. Not lethal, not damaging. A shutdown. The neural signal between brain and body interrupted for just long enough. All Might's eyes rolled back. His muscle form deflated. He crumpled. Izuku caught him. He caught the symbol of peace as he fell, one arm under his back, the other supporting his head, and for a moment they were just two people. A boy and a man, a monster and a hero, standing in the ruins of a training ground that looked like it had been hit by a natural disaster. Izuku lifted All Might onto his shoulder. The man weighed almost nothing in his skeletal form. Bones and tissue and a heart that had given everything it had to give. He walked to the exit gate. The gate was half a kilometer north. Izuku walked the entire distance carrying All Might over his shoulder, through ruined streets and collapsed buildings, past sparking wires and settling dust, humming a song. Not the Adventure Time theme. Something older, something that sounded like it belonged in a cathedral. He reached the gate. He stepped through. A buzzer sounded. Exam complete, the speakers announced. Student, Izuku Midoriya, result, pass. In the monitoring room, the examiner in charge of scoring looked at her clipboard. She looked at the screen. She looked at the clipboard again. What? She said. What box do I check? He didn't escape. He walked to the gate. He didn't capture. He knocked All Might unconscious. He carried him to the exit. Is that a capture? An escape? What is that? It's both, Nezu said. Check both boxes. That's not a category. It is now. Izuku set All Might down gently on the grass outside the gate. Recovery Girl was already approaching in her golf cart, first aid kit rattling. All Might's eyes opened, bleary, skeletal. He looked up at Izuku, who was standing over him, hat back on, glasses back on, coat somehow intact despite the beating it had taken. How long? All Might croaked. You lasted 14 minutes at full power against me, Izuku said. That's longer than most armies. All Might let out a breath that was half a laugh, half a wheeze. Did I make you try? Izuku was quiet for a moment. Yeah, he said. You did? It was a lie. But it was the kind of lie that good people tell, and All Might needed to hear it, and Izuku, for all the darkness inside him, was capable of that much kindness. Recovery Girl shooed Izuku away and began fussing over All Might. Izuku walked back toward the main building, passing the rest of Class 1A, who had finished their own exams and gathered to watch his match on the outdoor screen. They stared at him as he walked by. Bakugo's jaw was clenched so tight it could have cracked walnuts. Todoroki's face was unreadable. Kirishima looked like he'd witnessed the birth of a religion. Kaminari was openly weeping, though he'd later claim it was allergies. Uraraka was standing at the edge of the group. She met his eyes. Was that kind enough? He asked. Quiet enough that only she could hear. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached up and straightened his collar, which had gotten twisted during the fight. Yeah, she said. That was kind. He caught her hand as she pulled it back, just for a second, just long enough to feel the warmth. Then he let go, tipped his hat, and walked inside. Final exam, fought God, won, carried him home. He's okay, don't worry. That ultimate form of respect. 3 million likes. The fastest trending tweet in Japan that quarter, Aizawa found Izuku in the hallway afterward. You could have passed in 2 seconds, Aizawa said. Could have. Instead, you fought All Might head-on for 14 minutes, let him hit you repeatedly, then knocked him out and carried him to the gate like a sack of rice. That's a fair summary. Aizawa rubbed his eyes with both hands. Why? Because he asked me for a real fight, and I don't get asked for real fights very often. Aizawa dropped his hands. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him, past the coat and the hat and the glasses and the grin. You're gonna give me a stroke, Midoriya. You should take a vacation. I can't take a vacation. You're in my class. Sounds like a you problem. Aizawa walked away. Izuku heard him mutter something about early retirement. It was the same thing he'd been muttering for months. He never meant it. But the muttering seemed therapeutic. Summer arrived. UA's summer training camp was held at a remote mountain facility managed by a team of pro heroes called the Wild Pussycats, a quartet of outdoor-themed heroes who specialized in search and rescue operations. The location was deep in a forested mountain range, accessible only by a single winding road, surrounded by miles of uninterrupted wilderness. The bus ride was 2 hours. Izuku sat in the back with his hat over his face, as usual. Uraraka sat next to him, reading a manga volume she'd borrowed from Ashido. Their shoulders touched. Nobody commented on it anymore. It was just how they sat. Bakugo sat in the front, headphones on, staring out the window. He'd been quieter since the finals, since watching Izuku carry All Might like luggage. The training schedule he'd posted on his door had doubled in intensity. The bus stopped at a scenic overlook. The Pussycats were waiting. Pixie Bob, the Earth manipulation hero, grinned at the students. Welcome to your training camp. The facility is at the base of that mountain. She pointed to a peak that was conservatively 5 kilometers away through dense forest. Your challenge, get there by lunchtime, through the forest, on foot. What's in the forest? Kaminari asked, already sweating. Pixie Bob's grin widened. She slammed her paws into the ground. The forest floor erupted. Massive earth beasts, golems made of rock and soil, emerged from the tree line. Dozens of them, each the size of a car. Good luck. She screamed as the students were pushed off the overlook and into the forest by a tidal wave of dirt. The class scattered, fighting, running, cooperating in loose groups. Bakugo detonated 3 golems before he hit the ground. Todoroki froze a path through the forest with ice and fire. Kirishima punched his way through solid rock with hardened fists. Izuku walked. He walked through the forest at his usual pace, hands in pockets, coat billowing. Earth beasts charged him and crumbled on contact with his shadow, which spread beneath him like a stain and consumed anything that touched it. He didn't even look at them. He arrived at the facility first. By 40 minutes, he was sitting on the front porch of the main lodge, drinking a juice box, when the rest of the class stumbled out of the tree line 3 hours later. Battered, dirty, exhausted, and covered in mud. How? Ashido panted, collapsing on the grass. I walked. How? Quickly. The training camp ran for 5 days. Each day was designed to push the students past their limits. Quirk enhancement drills, endurance exercises, combat simulations. The Pussycats ran a brutal program, and the students suffered through it with the kind of determined misery that builds character. Izuku participated when required. He ran the drills at 1% effort and still outperformed everyone. He spent his free time sitting in trees, reading paperback novels he'd pulled from his shadow, a personal library collected over centuries. Dostoevsky, Pratchett, a battered copy of The Count of Monte Cristo that he claimed was a first edition. He also spent time with Koda Izumi, a 5-year-old boy, the Pussycats' ward, whose parents, both heroes, had been killed in action. He hated heroes. Hated the system. Hated the adults who told him his parents died doing something noble when all they'd really done was leave him alone. He threw a rock at Izuku on the second day. The rock bounced off Izuku's forehead. He didn't flinch. Nice arm, Izuku said. You play baseball? Go away. I hate heroes. You're all the same. You pretend to be strong and then you die and leave everyone behind. Izuku looked at this tiny, furious child with his red hat and his clenched fists and his eyes that were too old for his face. I'm not a hero, Izuku said, and I can't die, so we're already off to a good start. Everyone can die. I've tried. Multiple times. It doesn't stick. Koda stared at him with the suspicious intensity that only children and cats can manage. Prove it. Izuku manifested the castle and shot himself in the foot. The blast echoed across the campground. His boot exploded. His foot regrew in 2 seconds. Koda's eyes went wide. His mouth fell open. Cool, the kid whispered. The coolest, Izuku agreed. They sat together on the cliff overlooking the camp, and Koda told Izuku about his parents, and Izuku told Koda about loss. Not in platitudes, not in comfort, but in the blunt, honest language that only someone who'd experienced centuries of it could use. Your parents didn't leave you because they wanted to, Izuku said. They left because they were trying to make the world safer for you. That doesn't fix the hurt. Nothing fixes the hurt. But the hurt doesn't mean they didn't love you. It means they did. How do you know? Because I've got a mom who cries every time I walk out the door, and she lets me go anyway, because that's what love does. It holds on and lets go at the same time. Koda was quiet for a long moment. You're weird, he said. Absolutely. But you're okay. The highest compliment I've received this century. On the third night of camp, Izuku was sitting on the roof of the main lodge, watching the stars, when his shadow stirred. Not casually. Not the lazy shifting that happened when he was relaxed. This was sharp. Urgent. The way a hunting dog's ears prick when something moves in the brush. He stood up. The forest had gone quiet. Too quiet. No insects. No night birds. No wind in the trees. The mountain air had a taste to it. Chemical. Acrid. Wrong. Well, Izuku said to the dark, that's ahead of schedule. Blue flames lit the tree line. They came from the north, a wall of fire, cerulean and hellishly hot, consuming the forest in a line that stretched for 100 meters. The trees didn't just burn, they vaporized. The fire was precise, deliberate. A barrier cutting off the northern escape route. From the south, a purple mist began to spread through the trees. Poison gas, thick and heavy, rolling along the ground like fog, and wherever it touched, the grass withered and the insects died. And from the west, from the main trail that led to the camp, figures emerged. Dozens of them. Villains, armed with quirks and weapons, and the kind of desperate confidence that came from being told they were part of something bigger than themselves. They moved in coordinated groups, spreading out to encircle the camp. At the head of the formation, Tamura Shigaraki. He looked different, harder. His posture was straighter. The hands that covered his body were arranged with more care, and his eyes, visible through the fingers of the hand on his face, were bright with something that had evolved past madness into purpose. Beside him, Dabi, the blue fire villain, whose scarred face flickered in the light of his own flames. Twice, the mask-wearing cloner, Spinner, the lizard-themed villain with a sword made of other swords. Mr. Compress, the gentleman thief. Toga, the blood-drinking shapeshifter with the smile of someone who'd confused love with violence. And behind them all, lurking in the mist like a shadow within the shadows, a new figure. Tall, thin, wearing a blank white mask over a face nobody had seen. This one radiated nothing, no killing intent, no presence, no readable emotion. They were a hole in the world shaped like a person. The League of Villains. In force. With a plan. Aizawa reacted first. He was on the ground before the first villain crossed the tree line. Capture scarf unfurling, eyes blazing red with erasure. He took down 3 in the first 5 seconds, wrapping 1 in his scarf, canceling another's quirk mid-attack, kicking the 3rd in the jaw hard enough to spin them. "Get the students to the lodge," he shouted.
"Pussycats, establish a perimeter! This is a full-scale assault!"
The pussycats scrambled. Mandalay, the telepathic leader, sent a psychic broadcast to every student on the mountain. Enemy attack. Retreat to the main lodge immediately. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. The students, scattered across the mountainside in various training exercises, heard the command and reacted. Most of them ran for the lodge. Bakugo ran toward the fight. Todoroki formed an ice wall around the group of students nearest to him and started guiding them down the mountain, using fire to light the way and ice to clear the path. Izuku dropped from the roof of the lodge and landed in the clearing between the building and the approaching villain line. His coat spread around him like wings for a moment before settling. His shadow expanded. "Class 1A students." Shigaraki's voice carried across the clearing, amplified by something. A speaker in his collar, maybe. "We're here for one thing and one thing only. Cooperation." He stepped into the firelight. His smile was visible through the fingers of his mask. "We want the vampire," Shigaraki said. "Give us Izuku Midoriya and we leave. No one else gets hurt. Simple transaction." "Oh, I'm right here," Izuku called out, adjusting his glasses. "No need for the middleman approach. Very flattering, though. You brought an army." Shigaraki's eyes locked onto him. Something flickered in them, a mix of hatred and calculation. "Not for you," Shigaraki said. "I know better than to fight you directly. I learned that at USJ. I watched the footage. I studied you, and I know there's exactly one thing in this world that can make you cooperate." He raised his hand, snapped his fingers. From the tree line to the east, two villains emerged, dragging something. Someone between them. A girl, brown hair, round face, pink cheeks streaked with tears of frustration, not fear. Her hands were bound behind her back with quirk-suppressing cuffs, and she was thrashing, kicking, biting at the villain, holding her left arm. Ochako Uraraka. They'd grabbed her from the training exercise on the east slope. She'd been working with Asui on water rescue drills when the attack started. Asui had gotten away. Her camouflage and agility in wet environments made her nearly impossible to catch. Ochako had been a step too slow. The clearing went silent. Izuku looked at Ochako. She looked at him. Her eyes were blazing, furious, defiant, screaming at him without words that she was fine. She could handle this. She didn't need saving, but she was cuffed, and a villain had a knife near her throat, and Shigaraki was smiling. "Here's the deal," Shigaraki said. "You come with us willingly, and let me stop you there." Izuku's voice had changed. The humor was gone. The lazy drawl, the pop culture references, the one-liners, all of it, stripped away. What remained was flat, calm, a tone so devoid of inflection that it looped back around to being the most threatening sound anyone present had ever heard. The temperature in the clearing dropped. Not from ice, not from wind, from presence. From the sheer weight of something very old and very dangerous deciding that playtime was over. "You brought 50 men to my doorstep," Izuku said. "That's fine. I've eaten larger groups before breakfast." He took a step forward. "You attacked my classmates, burned a forest, gassed a mountain full of teenagers." Another step. "I could forgive all of that. It's villain stuff. It's what you do. I expect it the way I expect rain in April." His shadow was growing, spreading. The edges of it twitched and shifted, and within the darkness things moved. Eyes opened, mouths formed. The 3 million were stirring. But you touched her. Baskerville rose from the ground like a volcano erupting in slow motion. The hound was bigger than it had ever been, the size of the lodge itself. Its body was a storm of black flame, its eyes were furnaces, and its mouth, when it opened, revealed a throat that went down forever. Into the dark, into the place where consumed souls screamed in silence. It didn't roar, it breathed. A long, slow exhale of shadow and heat that flattened the grass in a 50-meter radius and made 3 villains on the eastern flank drop their weapons and run. Shigaraki stared up at the hound. His composure cracked. The mask of strategy and evolution shattered, and for one naked moment he was the same twitching, scratching, frightened man-child he'd been at the USJ. But he recovered. To his credit, he recovered. "Kill her," he ordered. The villain with the knife moved. The knife got within 3 inches of Ochako's throat before a shadow tendril, thin as a whip, fast as thought, shot from the ground beneath the villain's feet, wrapped around his wrist, and pulled. The villain's arm dislocated. He screamed. The knife clattered to the ground. A second tendril caught the other villain, the one holding Ochako's left arm, and threw him 30 meters straight up. He came back down on the other side of the tree line and did not reappear. Ochako, freed, dropped to her knees. She looked up at Izuku across the clearing. He was 50 meters away, standing in the center of his shadow, Baskerville towering behind him. His eyes were burning. Literally, red light poured from them, casting twin beams across the ground like spotlights from hell. "Run to the lodge," he said. His voice carried perfectly, calm as still water. She didn't argue. She was brave and she was fierce, but she knew what that voice meant. She'd heard it once before, when Izuku talked about the things he'd done in past centuries, and the words came out so flat and quiet that they barely sounded human. She ran. Izuku turned back to Shigaraki. "Nice speech, by the way," he said. He drew the Kasol and shot Shigaraki in the knee. The round hit like a freight train. Shigaraki's right knee exploded. Silver-jacketed .454 caliber tearing through flesh and bone and the reinforced joint guard he'd been wearing under his pants. The impact spun him sideways. He hit the ground, screaming, clutching his ruined leg. Dabi reacted. Blue fire erupted from both hands, twin streams of flame hot enough to melt steel, aimed directly at Izuku's chest. The fire hit. It washed over Izuku like a wave over a rock. His clothes burned. His skin charred and healed and charred again. He walked through the fire. Blue flames, Izuku said, emerging from the inferno, smoking, regenerating, closing the distance. Impressive temperature. About 2,000 degrees? Maybe 2,200? He tilted his head. I've walked through church fires hotter than this during the Inquisition. He backhanded Dabi. The blue fire villain flew sideways, hit a tree, and the tree broke in half. Dabi's stapled skin tore along the left side of his face. He didn't get up. Toga lunged from behind. She'd circled during the fire, knife in hand, giggling with the manic energy of someone who found violence romantic. She aimed for Izuku's neck. The knife struck and broke. The blade shattered against his skin like glass against concrete. Adorable, Izuku said. He grabbed her by the back of her collar and tossed her. She sailed through the air, landed in a bush, and popped back up immediately, still grinning, but limping. Twice tried to overwhelm him with clones. Doubles of the strongest villains in the league, copied and mass-produced. 10 Dabus. 10 spinners. 10 brutes with rock-hard skin and hammer fists. Baskerville ate them. The hound surged forward, jaws wide, and swept through the clone army like a combine through wheat. Each clone that entered Baskerville's mouth simply ceased to be. Dissolved into shadow, consumed, erased. The real Twice stumbled backward, babbling, his personality fractures cracking wider. No. Stop. That's not fair. That's my stop it! Izuku appeared behind Twice. One tap on the back of the head. Precise. Measured. Twice crumpled. Mr. Compress tried to seal Izuku in a marble. His quirk could compress matter into small spheres. He touched Izuku's shoulder. The compression started. Izuku's body began to shrink into the marble. Then it stopped. The marble cracked. Then shattered. Izuku reformed from the compressed state, expanding back to full size in a burst of shadow, and looked at Mr. Compress with something close to curiosity. Huh, Izuku said. That's a new sensation, like being squeezed through a straw. 2 out of 10. He flicked Mr. Compress in the forehead. The gentleman thief rocketed backward, unconscious before he hit the ground. The rank-and-file villains broke. They'd been watching their leaders get dismantled by a single teenager who was strolling through their forces like a man browsing a grocery store. Fear took over. 20 villains turned and ran for the tree line. Baskerville herded them. The hound circled the clearing in a blur of shadow flame, cutting off escape routes, funneling the fleeing villains back toward the center, where Aizawa and the pussycats, who had been handling the perimeter, could capture them. Spinner charged Izuku with his ridiculous sword of swords. Izuku caught the blade with 2 fingers, snapped it in half, and pushed Spinner to the ground with 1 hand. Get a real weapon, Izuku said. That thing looks like a junk drawer had a midlife crisis. The clearing was almost empty now. Villains littered the ground, unconscious, groaning, restrained by Aizawa's scarf or Pixie Bob's earth constructs. The blue fire had burned out. The poison gas was dissipating. Shigaraki was crawling. Dragging himself toward where Kurogiri's warp gate was forming, the mist villain had stayed in the tree line, keeping the escape route ready, smart enough to know that engaging Izuku directly was suicide. Izuku walked over. He crouched down next to Shigaraki. You know what your problem is? Izuku said. His voice was still flat, still calm. You keep thinking bigger weapons will close the gap. The Nomu, the army, taking hostages. But the gap isn't a problem of scale. It's a problem of category. You're playing chess. I'm the earthquake that swallowed the board. Shigaraki looked up at him, blood on his face, fury in his eyes, and fear. Real fear. The kind that lives in the spine. I'll kill you, Shigaraki hissed. I don't care what you are, I'll find a way. You won't, but I respect the ambition. Izuku stood up and let him crawl. Shigaraki reached the warp gate and fell through it. Kurogiri hesitated, his yellow eyes watching Izuku through the mist. Leave, Izuku said, and take the garbage with you. The warp gate swallowed the remaining League members, Dabi, Toga, the scattered survivors, and closed. The clearing was empty, Baskerville dissolved. The shadow receded. The clearing was just a clearing again, torn up, scorched, littered with unconscious bodies, but a clearing. Izuku stood alone in the center of it. He breathed. Then he walked to the lodge. Ochako was on the front porch. She'd gotten the cuffs off. Yaoyorozu had created a key as soon as she'd arrived. She was sitting on the steps, arms wrapped around her knees, Asui beside her, both of them watching the clearing. She saw Izuku coming. She stood up, he was at the bottom of the steps. stopped, looked up at her. Are you okay, hey? I'm fine. They didn't hurt me. I know. Then why do you look like that? He blinked. Like what? Like the world almost ended. He didn't answer. His jaw worked. His hands, steady enough to hold guns while being ripped apart, were shaking. Just slightly. Just enough. Izuku, Ochako said. She came down the steps. She stood in front of him. She reached up and took off his glasses. His red eyes were bright, not with power, but with something raw and exposed, something he'd kept locked behind 4 centuries of armor. I'm okay, she said. I know. Then believe it. He looked at her. Brown eyes. Warm. Present. Alive. Okay, he said. She put his glasses back on his face, straightened them carefully. There, she said. Back to normal. He exhaled. The shaking stopped. The Alucard grin returned, slower than usual, like a machine warming up. You know, he said, most people would be traumatized right now. I'm not most people. I'm starting to figure that out. She went back up the steps. At the top, she turned. For what it's worth, the giant fire dog was very impressive. Baskerville. His name is Baskerville. He's a good boy. He's a nightmarish hell beast forged from consumed souls and hatred. Good boy. Something in Izuku's chest cracked. Not broke, cracked, the way ice cracks in spring. The kind of crack that lets light through. He went inside. The students were gathered in the common room, scared, bruised, hyped up on adrenaline. He walked through them without stopping, went to the blood stash in the kitchen, drank 3 packs, and sat in the corner with his hat over his face. Nobody bothered him, except Bakugo, who walked over 20 minutes later and stood there until Izuku lifted the brim of his hat. What? You shot Shigaraki in the knee.
Yeah.
Why the knee? Because a kill shot would have been too easy, and he needs to limp for a while. Every step he takes, he'll remember what happens when he goes after the wrong people. Bakugo stared at him. That's the most metal thing I've ever heard. I contain multitudes. Shut up. But Bakugo's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Almost. The camp was shut down the next morning. Pro-heroes arrived in force. Police, emergency response, the whole apparatus. The students were bussed back to UA under armed escort. The media called it the Forest Training Camp incident. The Hero Commission called it a catastrophic security failure. Nezu called it expected. He'd been preparing contingencies since the USJ. Nobody asked Izuku for a statement. They'd learned. His tweet said everything. League of Villains showed up to training camp. Brought 50 guys. Left with 40. Don't threaten my classmates. This is a warning. 100 million impressions. International trending. A screenshot of the tweet was printed out and pinned to the wall of the Hero Commission's Situation Room. Summer ended. Second semester began. The Hero License exam was scheduled for September. A joint evaluation conducted at a massive testing facility in the Takoba district, involving students from UA, Shiketsu High, Ketsubutsu Academy, and several smaller hero programs. The goal: demonstrate competence in rescue operations, civilian management, and combat performance under pressure. Pass, and you earned a provisional hero license. Fail, and you retook it in 3 months. For most students, it was the most important test of their young careers. Izuku treated it the way he treated everything, as an inconvenience that happened to have entertainment value. The bus ride to the testing facility was uneventful except for one exchange. Midoriya, Aizawa said, standing at the front of the bus addressing the class, I need you to understand something about this exam. I'm listening. Other schools will be there, students who have studied you, who have prepared specifically to counter you. Some of them are genuinely skilled. I need you to go easy. I need you to not start an international incident. Define international incident. Any event that requires a diplomatic response from more than one government. That's a very specific definition. I've learned to be specific with you. Izuku adjusted his glasses. I'll behave, mostly. I'll take mostly. The testing facility was enormous, a stadium-sized complex with multiple environmental zones. Urban, rural, industrial, coastal. Hundreds of students from different schools milled around in their hero costumes, stretching, strategizing, sizing each other up. Izuku walked in wearing his UA gym uniform, red coat, hat, and glasses. He was immediately recognized. A cluster of Shiketsu students spotted him and went quiet. One of them, a tall boy with a crew cut named Inasa Yoarashi, stared with an intensity that bordered on spiritual. That's him, Inasa whispered. The vampire. The one who fought All Might. This fought and won, his teammate corrected. I want to fight him. Inasa, no. I want to fight him. From across the hall, a Ketsubutsu student named Shindo, handsome, confident, class president energy, approached the UA group with a practiced smile and an outstretched hand. UA students, welcome. We're all Izuku walked past him without acknowledging his existence. Looking forward to. Shindo's hand hung in the air, testing ourselves against the best. His smile cracked. Cool. Great. Totally fine. Bakugo smirked. It was the closest thing to solidarity he'd ever shown Izuku. The first phase of the exam was a battle royale, every student against every other student, using special balls that had to be placed on 3 of the 6 targets worn on each person's body. Eliminate enough opponents to advance. Present Mike, serving as announcer, explained the rules. Izuku listened to approximately 12% of them. Begin! 300 students scrambled. Alliances formed and broke in seconds. Quirks activated across the testing grounds. Ice, fire, wind, earth, sound, light. Every variation of human ability colliding in a chaos of combat. Izuku walked into the urban zone. A team of 6 Ketsubutsu students surrounded him immediately. They'd planned this, targeting UA's strongest as a group to take him down fast. Shindo was at the center, his vibration quirk humming through the ground. 6 on 1, Izuku said. I appreciate the respect. Shindo activated his quirk. The ground shattered in a 10-meter radius, creating a localized earthquake that toppled buildings and threw everyone off balance. Everyone except Izuku, who floated above the ruined ground on a platform of solidified shadow and placed balls on 2 of Shindo's targets before the Ketsubutsu student realized the earthquake had done nothing. How? You can't shake something that doesn't follow the laws of physics. Izuku placed the 3rd ball on Shindo's back. Eliminated. The buzzer on Shindo's vest beeped. He stared down at it. Izuku dropped the remaining 5 Ketsubutsu students in 11 seconds. Shadow tendrils whipped across the broken ground, placing balls on targets with surgical precision, hands, shoulders, backs. Each placement was gentle, almost polite. Better luck next time, Izuku said, walking away. Inasa found him next. The Shiketsu student came in fast. Wind quirk, massive power output. He generated a tornado that tore through the urban zone, ripping up concrete and steel, funneling it all toward Izuku in a vortex of destruction. Izuku stood in the eye of the tornado and caught a spinning piece of rebar out of the air. Nice wind, he called up to Inasa, who was hovering above the vortex. You generate this yourself? I am the wind! Inasa screamed with entirely too much enthusiasm. That's a weird thing to say, but okay. Izuku threw the rebar. Not at Inasa, at the ball in his own hand, which he'd flicked upward. The rebar struck the ball at the perfect angle to redirect it through the tornado's air current, ride the updraft, and land on Inasa's back target, a trick shot. Through a tornado, Inasa's vest beeped. Incredible! Inasa screamed, plummeting as his concentration broke. He hit the ground, stood up immediately, and bowed so deep his forehead touched the concrete. You are worthy. I am honored to lose to you. You're weird, Izuku said. I like you. Within 10 minutes, Izuku had eliminated 23 students and qualified for the second phase with the highest elimination count in the exam's history. The second phase was a rescue operation, a mock disaster, simulated earthquake, buildings collapsed, civilians trapped. The civilians were played by trained actors from the Hero Activities Commission, complete with scripted injuries, panic responses, and specific rescue difficulty ratings. Students were scored on speed, technique, communication, and civilian management. Izuku was assigned to the industrial zone. Collapsed factories, chemical spill simulations, heavy debris. He started the rescue operation the same way he started everything, by walking in and immediately doing something that made the examiners question their life choices. A simulated building had collapsed on 3 trapped civilians. Standard rescue procedure called for careful debris removal, structural assessment, and coordinated extraction. Izuku lifted the building. The entire collapsed structure, thousands of tons of concrete and steel. He grabbed it from beneath, his shadow reinforcing his grip, and raised it like he was lifting a blanket off a bed. He held it with one hand while his other hand gently pulled the civilians free. You're safe, he told a woman playing a civilian with a broken leg. She stared at him. She'd been doing this job for 6 years. She had never, in 6 years, seen a student lift an entire building. Are you "Are you really a student?" she whispered, breaking character. "Technically." He set the building down. The examiner assigned to his zone was writing furiously on his clipboard. Then he stopped writing, looked at what he'd written, crossed it out, and started over. The rescue phase continued for 30 minutes. Izuku extracted 41 civilians, more than triple the next highest student, while simultaneously providing first aid, managing panic, and maintaining a perimeter against simulated aftershocks. And then, at the 22-minute mark, something happened that wasn't part of the simulation. A real earthquake hit. Magnitude 4.2, epicenter 6 kilometers east. Not massive, but enough to rattle the testing facility, collapse 2 of the structural supports in the eastern wing, and trap a group of people who were not actors. The exam proctors scrambled. Emergency protocols activated. The announcement system blared, "Attention! Real seismic event. All simulations suspended. Emergency response teams en route." Izuku felt the quake. Felt the difference between the simulated tremors and the real thing. Felt through his shadow the vibration pattern, the way real stone breaks versus how staged collapses are engineered. He shadow stepped to the eastern wing. 3 support beams had buckled. A section of the second floor had pancaked onto the first. Underneath it, 9 people. Exam staff, 2 examiners, a medic, 6 observing officials from the Hero Commission. Real people, real danger, real debris pressing down on bodies that couldn't regenerate. Izuku went to work. He phased through the rubble like it was smoke, his body turning to shadow, sliding through gaps in the concrete, reforming on the other side. He found the first trapped person, an examiner, male, 40s, leg pinned under a steel beam, and ripped the beam free. The man screamed. Izuku picked him up, shadow stepped back to the safe zone, and deposited him on the ground. He went back, found 2 more, pulled them out, back again, 3 more. The support structure was groaning, threatening secondary collapse. Izuku manifested a lattice of shadow under the remaining debris, holding it in place, a temporary framework that bought minutes. He pulled the last 3 people free in under 60 seconds, 9 people. Rescued. Unharmed. In less than 3 minutes. The emergency response teams arrived to find the eastern wing stabilized, 9 people sitting on the grass wrapped in shock blankets, and Izuku Midoriya leaning against a wall, on his phone, tweeting. The Crimson Fucker, Hero License exam got interrupted by an actual earthquake. Handled both. Multitasking king. License arc. Real disaster during fake disaster. The tweet went out at 2:47 p.m. By 3 p.m., it had 50 million impressions. By 3:15, it was the top trending topic in Japan. By 3:30, international news outlets were picking it up. The lead examiner for Izuku's zone filed 4 separate incident reports. 3 psychological assessments were requested by students from other schools who had witnessed the rescue from a distance and were experiencing what one forum described as a fundamental reevaluation of personal capability and self-worth. One formal complaint was lodged by the Hero Commission's Public Relations Department regarding a social media post made during an active emergency that compromised the Commission's narrative control. Izuku passed the exam. Perfect score, the first in 17 years. He received his provisional hero license in a small ceremony at the end of the day. The card had his photo, red eyes, grin, hat, and his hero name, which he'd registered during orientation. Hero name, Nosferatu. You couldn't pick something normal? Aizawa asked on the bus ride home. Normal is boring, and I refuse to participate in boring. You could have been Crimson or Shadow or literally anything that doesn't reference a century-old horror film. Nosferatu is a classic. It's about a vampire who terrifies an entire town just by existing. It's autobiographical. Aizawa put his head in his hands. The bus rumbled back toward Yubol. Izuku sat in the back, Ochako next to him. Her head was on his shoulder. She'd fallen asleep. The exam had been exhausting for everyone who wasn't immortal, and her breathing was slow and even. He didn't move. He sat perfectly still, letting her sleep, watching the city lights pass through the window, and his shadow lay flat and calm beneath his feet. The Hero Commission summoned Izuku to a meeting 3 days later. He went because Nezu asked him to, and because the prospect of annoying bureaucrats was irresistible. The meeting took place in a glass and steel conference room in Tokyo. 6 commissioners sat across a long table. Expensive suits, expensive haircuts, the kind of people who made decisions about heroes without ever being one. The head of the commission, a woman named Nagamasa, mid-50s, silver hair, the expression of someone who had eaten a lemon and was offended by it, opened the meeting. Mr. Midoriya, thank you for coming. I didn't have a choice. My principal said it was this or detention. We've been following your career with interest. Everyone has. I'm very interesting. Your abilities are unclassified. Your power level exceeds any metric we have. You've single-handedly defeated a bioweapon, dismantled a League of Villains assault, captured the hero killer, and passed the hero license exam with the highest score in nearly 2 decades. And you're 15. 16, actually. Birthday was last month. Nobody noticed. Happy birthday. Thanks. What do you want? Nagamasa folded her hands. We want to understand what you are, Mr. Midoriya, and we want to ensure that you operate within the framework of... No, I haven't finished. You want to classify me, categorize me, put me in a box with a label and a handler and a set of rules designed to make you feel safe. The answer is no. Mr. Midoriya, I am not a weapon to be aimed. I am not an asset to be managed. I'm a 16-year-old UA student with a provisional hero license and the ability to consume your entire security detail before you finish your next sentence. He said this pleasantly with a smile. I'm a hero. I'll act like one, but I do it my way, on my terms, and if you try to cage me, metaphorically or literally, you will discover why I have a Wikipedia page in 17 languages. Silence. You don't have a Wikipedia page, one of the junior commissioners said. Check again. The commissioner pulled out his phone. His eyes widened. He does. When did this? My fans are dedicated. Izuku stood up. Are we done? I have a class on disaster response at 3 and 13 gets cranky when I'm late. He left. The commission sat in the conference room staring at the empty chair. Nagamasa picked up her phone and called Nezu. Your student is impossible, she said. Yes, Nezu agreed. Isn't it wonderful? The months that followed were busy. UA ramped up its security, new barriers, new protocols, new surveillance systems designed by Powerloader and improved by Nezu. The campus became a fortress without looking like one. The students trained. They grew. They became, slowly and in their own ways, heroes. Bakugo's combat scores were closing in on the school record, not Izuku's record, which existed in a different category, but the human record. His strategy had evolved. His teamwork, grudging, abrasive, but functional, had improved. He and Kirishima had developed a combat style that was devastating in close quarters. Todoroki trained both halves of his quirk with equal intensity. The fire that Izuku had unlocked at the sports festival had become a permanent part of his arsenal. He was stronger, faster, more balanced. He'd visited his mother in the hospital for the first time in years. Ida had become the class representative in function as well as title, organizing study groups, coordinating training schedules, mediating the inevitable conflicts that arose in a class of 20 superpowered teenagers. His brush with Stain had tempered him. He was still rigid, still earnest, still Ida. But there was a weight to him now, the weight of a lesson learned the hard way. Uraraka's combat skills had sharpened considerably. She'd been working with Gunhead, a martial arts hero, during her internship, and the techniques she'd picked up transformed her from a support type into something far more dangerous. Her zero-gravity quirk, combined with close combat training, made her unpredictable. She could float her opponent, pin them, use their own mass against them. She'd also beaten Bakugo in a sparring match. Once, by a technicality. Bakugo had not recovered from the indignity and trained for 3 days straight afterward. You beat Bakugo, Izuku said when he heard. On a technicality. A win's a win. He's going to destroy me in the rematch. Probably, but you won the first one. That's the one that counts. She grinned at him. He grinned back. They were sitting on the steps outside the dorm again. Their spot, though neither of them called it that. Can I ask you something? She said. You always can. The night of the training camp, when they took me, she paused, chose her words carefully. You were different after, not during. You were terrifying, which is normal for you. But after, when you came to the lodge, you were shaking. I regenerated from it. You can't regenerate from feelings, Izuku. He was quiet for a long time. A car passed on the road below campus. The dorm lights were warm behind them. When I saw you in those cuffs, he said, with that knife near your throat, something happened. Something I haven't felt in centuries. It wasn't rage. Rage is hot. This was cold. This was the part of me that levels cities and drinks oceans, looking at the one thing in this world I can't replace and seeing it in danger. She listened. She didn't interrupt. I have 3 million souls inside me, he said. I've consumed armies. I've walked through fire and silver and blessed ground. There is nothing on this earth that can hurt me. He looked at her, except losing you. The words hung in the air between them. Heavy. True. The kind of truth that takes centuries to admit and seconds to say. Ochako's eyes were bright. She blinked. A tear ran down her cheek, just one, and she wiped it away with the back of her hand. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, she said, and you phrased it like a threat assessment. He laughed. She laughed. The tension didn't break, it transformed into something lighter, something that could be carried. I'm not good at this, he said. Being whatever this is. I've been alive for 400 years and I've never... Izuku. Yeah? Shut up. She kissed him. It was quick, warm, her lips against his for maybe 2 seconds, and in those 2 seconds, 3 million souls went completely, perfectly silent. She pulled back. Her face was red. His face was... Well, his face was always pale, but something in it had changed. The grin was gone. In its place was an expression so open, so human, so young that if you didn't know better, you'd think he was just a 16-year-old boy on a warm evening, experiencing something for the first time. There, she said. Now you have data. What? You're always analyzing everything, categorizing, processing. So process that. He stared at her. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. I think I need more data, he said. Smooth. I'm 400 years old. I've had practice. That was not smooth. That was a statistics joke. It was a romantic statistics joke. She kissed him again, longer this time. His hand came up, carefully, gently, the hand that had held guns and crushed steel and punched through walls, and cupped her cheek like she was made of glass. She wasn't. She was tougher than glass, tougher than most things he'd encountered. But he was gentle anyway. When they separated, she leaned her forehead against his. This doesn't change anything, she said. You're still a monster. The monster. You're still impossible, impossibly handsome. And I still expect you to walk me to class tomorrow. Obviously. She pulled back, smiled at him. That smile, the one that could restart a dead heart, and went inside. Izuku sat on the steps. His shadow was still. The night was quiet. 3 million souls rested inside him, and every single one of them was smiling. He did not tweet about it. Some things were just his. October came, and with it, the League of Villains evolved. Shigaraki had been busy. The knee Izuku had shot had healed, badly, with a limp that would never fully go away, and the pain had become fuel. He'd stopped scratching his neck. He'd started planning. The League's ranks had swelled. New recruits drawn to Shigaraki's message that the hero system was broken, that the symbol of peace was a facade, that the only true freedom was the freedom to destroy. They weren't all thugs and bottom feeders anymore. Some of them were smart, organized, dangerous in ways that went beyond quirks and fists. And Shigaraki had found something. Not someone. Something. A quirk. Sold on the black market, harvested from a dying man in a hospital in Yokohama. The man's name was irrelevant. His quirk was called resonance, the ability to attune to spiritual frequencies, to reach into dimensions that existed alongside the physical world and disturb them, vibrate them, turn the inhabitants against each other. In normal use, it was a curiosity, a parlor trick. The man who'd had it could make ghostly sounds in old buildings, rattle cups in haunted houses, spook pets. But Shigaraki didn't want normal use. He'd given the quirk to the figure in the white mask. The one who'd lurked at the back of the training camp assault, doing nothing, observing. The one who was a hole in the world. His name was Kuretake. He didn't talk, he didn't eat, he barely breathed. He existed in a state of permanent stillness, like a held breath, and the quirk resonance fit him like a key in a lock. Kuretake could reach into Izuku's soul dimension. He could touch the 3 million, and he could make them scream. It started on a Thursday. Izuku was in class, present Mike's English lecture, when the noise hit. Not external noise, internal. A vibration that started in his chest and radiated outward through every fiber of his being. The 3 million souls, usually dormant, a background hum, a constant pressure that he'd learned to live with over centuries, erupted into chaos, screaming, wailing. 3 million voices hitting a frequency that turned his nervous system into a lightning rod. His vision fractured. his hearing distorted. The classroom tilted sideways. He gripped his desk. The wood cracked under his fingers. Midoriya? Present Mike paused mid-sentence. Are you? Fine, Izuku said through gritted teeth. His eyes were burning brighter than usual, and the shadows at his feet were thrashing. Just give me a second. The noise subsided, slowly, like a wave pulling back. The 3 million settled, still agitated, still vibrating, but manageable. Izuku released the desk. The wood was splintered. He'd crushed the edges into powder. Okay, he said. That was new. It happened again that night, and the next morning, and twice the following afternoon. Each time, the noise was louder, longer, more disruptive. The souls inside him were being stirred like a hornet's nest, and the source was external. Something was reaching into him, poking the hive and pulling back before he could trace it. He told Nezu. Something is targeting my internal population, Izuku said, sitting in the principal's office, drinking a blood pack, agitating them, making them unstable. Can you identify the source? It's external, some kind of frequency or vibration aimed at the soul dimension. I've never felt anything like it. Could it be a quirk? Has to be. Nothing else could reach in there. Nezu set his tea down. The League. Almost certainly. Can it hurt you? Izuku considered this. Actually considered it, which was unusual. He typically answered questions about his vulnerability with sarcasm. The fact that he paused told Nezu everything. It can't kill me, Izuku said. It can't damage me physically, but it's like static, interference. When the 3 million are agitated, my focus splits. My reactions slow, barely, imperceptibly, but they slow. And if whoever's doing this figures out how to push harder, they might be able to distract me at the wrong moment. That's concerning. That's annoying. Concerning would imply I'm worried. I'm not worried. I'm irritated. Of course. But Nezu was worried. He'd built contingency plans for every threat he could imagine. This was the first time he'd encountered a threat that targeted the one thing he couldn't account for, the ecosystem inside Izuku Midoriya. The attacks continued, daily, sometimes hourly. Izuku adapted. He learned to compartmentalize the noise, to build walls within his own soul dimension, to calm the 3 million through sheer force of will. It worked, mostly, but it was constant. Draining in a way that physical damage never was. He was sitting on the dorm roof one evening, dealing with a particularly nasty boutinal chaos. The 3 million screaming in a frequency that made his teeth ache, when Ochako found him. She climbed the access ladder, stepped onto the roof, and sat down next to him without a word. She'd figured out what was happening. Not the details. Izuku hadn't shared those. But the pattern. She'd noticed him flinching during class, gripping surfaces hard enough to leave marks, going quiet at odd moments. It's getting worse, she said. A statement, not a question. I'm handling it. You gripped the lunch table so hard today that Sato's pudding fell off the edge. Sato's pudding was structurally unsound. Izuku. He sighed. The 3 million were quieting. The current wave was passing, dissipating into the background. His shoulders relaxed fractionally. Someone's messing with my insides, he said. Some kind of frequency attack aimed at the soul dimension. It makes the 3 million go haywire, like a dog whistle, but for dead people. That sounds terrible. It's inconvenient. Can I help? He looked at her. She was serious. Brown eyes steady, that particular expression she got when she'd already decided to do something and was asking permission as a courtesy. You're offering to help me manage 3 million screaming souls. I'm offering to sit with you while you deal with it. Sometimes that's enough. He stared at her for a long moment. Yeah, he said. Sometimes it is. She scooted closer, shoulder to shoulder. She pulled out her phone and put on an episode of Adventure Time. She'd started watching it because he loved it, and she discovered she loved it too. And now they were 4 seasons deep. They watched Marceline sing, the 3 million inside Izuku, settled as the music played through tiny phone speakers on a rooftop in the dark. Funny how that worked. The source of the attacks revealed itself 2 weeks later. It had to. The League was building towards something, and surveillance, Nezu's specifically, aided by a network of information sources that the Hero Commission didn't know about and didn't need to, had been tracking unusual quirk signatures in the Yokohama district. Nezu brought Izuku the intelligence. Kurite? Nezu said, sliding a file across his desk. No known surname. The quirk is called resonance, spiritual frequency manipulation. He was given the quirk through an unknown transfer method. My best theory is a variant of All for One's distribution network. All for One, Izuku said. The name tasted old, familiar in a way that bothered him. A villain, perhaps the villain. He's been operating in the shadows for over a century, stockpiling quirks, distributing them, building an empire. He's the one behind Shigaraki, behind the Nomu, behind all of it. I know the name. Alucard knew the name. Something in my memory connects him to old business, pre-quirk era business. Nezu raised an eyebrow. Pre-quirk? The original Alucard, the real one, encountered something in the late 19th century. An organization experimenting with supernatural power transfer, the Millennium Group. They were Nazis eventually, but before that they were something else. Researchers, collectors. They wanted to bottle what I am and mass produce it. And you think All for One is connected? I think the idea of stealing power and giving it to others isn't original. Someone's been doing it for a long time. The names change. The method evolves, but the concept is ancient. Nezu sipped his tea. That's a terrifying thought. Welcome to my world. The confrontation happened on a Friday. Izuku tracked Kuratake's signal. The resonance frequency left traces, breadcrumbs that the 3 million could feel even when the attack wasn't active, like footprints in snow. Izuku followed them to an abandoned warehouse complex on the waterfront in Yokohama. He went alone. Nezu objected. Aizawa objected. All Might, who was briefed despite his retirement from active hero work, objected loudly and at length. Izuku went anyway. This is between me and whatever's poking my brain, he said. Bringing back up against a quirk that targets my soul dimension is like bringing friends to a surgery. They can't help. They'd just be in the way. And if it's a trap, Aizawa asked, then it's a trap designed for me, which means it's designed to fail. He shadow-stepped from UA's campus to the Yokohama waterfront in a series of jumps, rooftop to rooftop, shadow to shadow, crossing the distance in minutes. He arrived at the warehouse complex as the sun was going down, painting the sky in shades of red and orange that matched his eyes. The complex was 3 buildings arranged in a U-shape around a central loading dock, old shipping containers stacked in rows, the smell of rust and salt water. No lights, no movement. Izuku walked in through the front. The resonance hit him immediately, full force. Kuretake had been waiting. The frequency was dialed to maximum, a psychic scream that tore through Izuku's soul dimension like a chainsaw through fabric. The 3 million erupted. 3 million voices, all in agony, all at once. A wall of sound inside his skull that would have killed any normal person and driven any extraordinary person insane. Izuku kept walking, his vision blurred. His steps slowed. Not much, but perceptibly. Shadows around him flickered and destabilized. Baskerville, trying to rise instinctively, stuttered and collapsed back into the ground, unable to fully form, but he kept walking. Kuretake stood at the far end of the warehouse, in the center of a cleared space surrounded by shipping containers. The white mask was featureless. The body beneath it was thin, almost frail. Both hands were raised, palms out, and from those palms, visible only to Izuku, pulsed waves of energy, silver white, vibrating at a frequency that existed outside the normal spectrum. Behind Kuretake, Shigaraki, limping, watching. A new hand mask on his face, this one arranged more deliberately, framing his eyes. And beside Shigaraki, 20 League soldiers, armed, ready. There he is, Shigaraki said. His voice was different, calmer, more controlled. The twitching was gone, the scratching was gone. What remained was sharp. The unbeatable monster, the god in a school uniform. Except you don't look so unbeatable right now. Izuku stopped in the center of the warehouse. The resonance was hammering him. Constant, relentless. The 3 million writhing and screaming inside his dimension. He was annoyed, genuinely, authentically, completely annoyed. I'm going to be honest with you, Shigaraki, Izuku said, his voice strained for the first time anyone had ever heard. This is the closest anyone has come to actually bothering me since 1944. And in 1944, it was a werewolf with a grudge and a panzer division. So congratulations, you've graduated from pathetic to mildly inconvenient. Kuretake, Shigaraki said, push harder. Kuretake's output increased. Edward, the frequency spiked. Inside Izuku, the 3 million went from screaming to something beyond screaming, a frequency of anguish that made his knees shake, his hat fell off, his glasses cracked. For 1 second, one single fleeting second, Izuku Midoriya looked like he was in pain. Shigaraki smiled. For the first time since the USJ, since the training camp, since every humiliation and defeat, Tamura Shigaraki smiled with genuine satisfaction. Not so fun when someone fights back, is it? Izuku looked up. His eyes were burning, not glowing, burning. Red fire poured from his eye sockets like lava from a volcanic rift. His shadow was a maelstrom beneath his feet, churning, seething, filled with the faces and forms of 1,000,000 consumed souls trying to break free. Fun, Izuku said. You think this is about fun? He took a step forward. The ground cracked. Let me show you what happens when I stop having fun. He opened his mouth. What came out was not a sound. It was an authority. A command, spoken in a language that predated human civilization, the language of blood, of binding, of the original contract between the first vampire and the night itself. The 3,000,000 heard it, and they obeyed. The chaos inside him stopped. Every soul, every voice, every scream, cut off like a switch had been flipped. The 3,000,000 didn't calm down. They were commanded to silence by something older and more powerful than any frequency, by Alucard. By the king, Kuritake's resonance hit the silence and bounced. The frequency that had been tearing through Izuku's soul dimension found nothing to grab. The souls were locked down, sealed, placed in a stasis that resonance couldn't penetrate. Kuritake staggered. The feedback from his own reflected power hit him like a truck. Blood poured from his nose, his ears, the edges of his mask. Izuku moved. He crossed the distance between himself and Kuritake in a single shadow step. He was there, right there. His hand on Kuritake's face, palm flat against the white mask. Here's what's going to happen, Izuku said, his voice back to normal, calm, amused, carrying the weight of centuries. I'm going to absorb you. Your body, your quirk, your consciousness, all of it is going to join the collection. You'll be soul number 3,000,001. And inside my dimension, surrounded by 3,000,000 very angry neighbors who've been listening to your noise for weeks, you're going to have a very, very long eternity to think about your choices. Kuritake tried to scream. The mask cracked under Izuku's grip. Any last words? A muffled sound. Barely audible. Louder. The mask shattered. Kuritake's face was ordinary, pale, terrified. His mouth moved. Please. Wrong answer. Izuku's shadow surged up from the ground and swallowed Kuritake whole. The absorption was instant. The man's body dissolved into darkness, pulled down into the dimension, consumed. His quirk, his consciousness, his existence, all of it added to the collection. Inside the dimension, 3,000,000 souls turned to look at the new arrival. The silence held, and then from deep within the dark, a low sound. The collective awareness of 3,000,000 consumed beings recognizing fresh meat. Izuku closed his eyes for a moment. Listened, felt the new soul settle into its place. Keep the noise down, he said to his own insides. I'm trying to have a conversation. He turned to Shigaraki. The League soldiers were gone. They'd run the moment Kuritake was absorbed. Self-preservation for once, winning over loyalty. 20 armed villains sprinting for the exits, wanting nothing to do with whatever was happening in this warehouse. Shigaraki stood alone, limping. No Nomu, no army. No secret weapon, just a man with decay on his fingertips and fury in his heart. You should run too, Izuku said. Shigaraki's jaw tightened, his hands clenched. The skin around his neck was red, old scars from old scratching, healed but never faded. I'm not afraid of you, Shigaraki said. Yes, you are. I will find a way to destroy you. Maybe, but not today, and not tomorrow, and probably not in this lifetime. Izuku picked his hat up from the floor, dusted it off, and put it back on. Go home, Shigaraki. Heal, plan, come back with something better. Because whatever you bring next, whatever weapon, whatever army, whatever quirk you dig up from whatever hole, I'll still be here. I'll always be here. And I will always be stronger. Shigaraki stared at him. The fury was there. The fear was there. And something else. A grudging, horrified recognition. The understanding that Izuku Midoriya was something that should not exist in any rational universe, and yet here he was, standing in a warehouse, wearing a dumb hat, smiling. This isn't over, Shigaraki said. I hope not. You're the most interesting villain I've had in decades. Kurogiri's warp gate opened behind Shigaraki. The hand-covered villain stepped through without another word. The gate closed. The warehouse was empty. Izuku stood alone in the dark, surrounded by fallen shipping containers and the fading echo of a frequency that had, for a few minutes, genuinely irritated him. He pulled out his phone. Some guy tried to weaponize my inner demons. Ate him. They're my inner demons, not his. Boundaries matter. Hashed self-care. 40 million impressions by midnight. He shadow stepped back to you. Aizawa was waiting at the gate. Arms crossed, face unreadable. The kind of unreadable that, on Aizawa, meant extreme emotion carefully bottled. Report, Aizawa said. Went to warehouse, got attacked by soul frequency guy, ate soul frequency guy, Shigaraki monologued, Shigaraki left, warehouse is intact, no casualties. You went alone against an unknown threat that was specifically designed to target your weaknesses. And I won. You're welcome. That is not the point. Aizawa. Izuku stopped, looked at his teacher instead. I know you worry. I know this whole thing, me, what I am, what I do, makes your job impossible. But I need you to understand something. I am 400 years old. I have fought every kind of enemy the world has ever produced, and I came back tonight in one piece because there is nothing out there that can take me down. The closest anyone came was making me annoyed for a few minutes. That's the ceiling. That's the absolute worst case scenario for fighting me. Mild irritation. Aizawa's jaw worked. You're still my student, he said, and my students don't go into danger alone. Your students are mortal. I'm not. Mortal or not, you're mine. All of you. Every reckless, overpowered, insufferable one of you. Aizawa's voice cracked, just slightly, on the last word. He caught it, covered it with a cough. Now go to bed. We have class tomorrow. Izuku walked past him. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, he said, you're the best teacher I've had in 4 centuries, and I studied under some questionable people in the 1600s. Go. Bed. Going. He went inside. Aizawa stayed at the gate for another minute, staring at the dark campus, running a hand through his hair. I'm gonna go gray, he muttered. I'm gonna go gray, and it's going to be his fault. He went to bed too. He did not sleep. This was normal. November faded into December. The days shortened. The air got cold. Snow fell on UA's campus, turning it into a postcard. White roofs, frosted trees, students in winter uniforms rushing between buildings with their breath fogging. Izuku didn't feel the cold, another vampire perk. But he wore a scarf because Ochako had knitted it for him. Dark red, slightly uneven, with one end longer than the other. And when she saw him wearing it for the first time, her face went through an entire spectrum of emotions in 3 seconds. You're wearing it, she said. I'm wearing it. It's terrible. I know it's terrible. One end is way longer. It's perfect. You're just saying that because... I'm saying it because it's the first thing anyone's made for me by hand in over 100 years. The last one was a wooden stake, and that person was trying to kill me. She stared at him. Then she hugged him, right there in the hallway in front of everyone, wrapping her arms around his waist and pressing her face into his chest. He hugged her back. The scarf bunched up between them. Kaminari walked by, saw them, and silently high-fived Kirishima. Bakugo walked by, saw them, and said nothing. But that evening in the common room, he asked Kirishima a question he'd never asked before. What's it like? Having someone who just stays? Kirishima looked at him. You mean like a partner? I mean like a person who doesn't leave. I think it's the scariest thing in the world, Kirishima said. Scarier than any fight, because fights end. People don't. They just keep being there. Bakugo was quiet for a long time. Yeah, he said. That sounds about right. The year turned. January. A new semester. New challenges. The hero course ramped up. Joint training exercises, advanced combat simulations, real-world patrol assignments under licensed heroes. The students of Class 1A were becoming, incrementally and irrevocably, professionals. Izuku's presence on campus had become a fact of life. The way gravity is a fact of life. You don't think about it, but everything is built around it. Training exercises were designed with him in mind. Specifically, designed so that he didn't invalidate them entirely. Grading curves were adjusted, security protocols were calibrated to his capabilities. He still tweeted, he still wore the coat. He still drank blood from medical packs labeled with his name in the common room fridge. He still sat in the back of every class with his hat over his face, absorbing information through 400 years of osmosis. But something had changed. Small things. Subtle things. The kind of changes that you notice only if you're paying attention. He said thank you to Recovery Girl when she stocked his blood packs. He held the door for Ida. He helped Tokoyami train Dark Shadow in controlled darkness exercises, offering genuine advice, not quips, not one-liners, actual tactical guidance drawn from centuries of shadow combat. He visited Kota on a weekend, brought him a DVD box set of Adventure Time. Kota didn't hug him. The kid was too proud for that. But he stood at the door and watched Izuku leave with an expression that looked from a certain angle like hope. He called his mother every night, without fail. Izuku Midoriya, who had accepted her son's transformation with the fierce, unconditional love that only mothers possess, would answer on the first ring and talk to him for 30 minutes about nothing. What she'd cooked, what she'd watched on TV, whether the neighbor's cat had gotten into the garden again. "I love you, Mom," he'd say at the end of every call. "I love you too, sweetheart. Stay safe. I'm immortal. Stay safe. Anyway." He smiled every time. The real smile, the human one. And Ochako, who had become the fixed point around which his world turned, the way a compass needle always points north. They weren't dramatic about it. They didn't perform. She held his hand during movie nights in the common room. He walked her to her door every evening. They studied together. Or she studied and he read whatever century-old novel he was currently working through, while occasionally offering commentary on her homework. "You spelled reconnaissance wrong," he'd say. "How do you even know that? Your hat's over your face." "I can see through the hat. Vampire thing. That's creepy. That's efficient." One evening late in January, they were on the roof, their spot. The city lights spread out below them and the sky was clear enough to see Orion. "I've been thinking," Ochako said. "Dangerous. About after graduation. About what kind of hero I want to be. And I want to be the kind that people aren't afraid to ask for help. Not the flashy kind. Not the big fight kind. The kind that shows up when someone's having the worst day of their life and makes it a little better." Izuku looked at her. The city lights reflected in her eyes. "You already are that person," he said. "I'm talking about professionally. So am I." She turned to him. "What about you? What kind of hero does an immortal vampire want to be?" He thought about it, actually thought about it, the way he thought about very few things, with the full weight of 400 years of perspective bearing down on the question. "I want to be the kind of hero that means nobody has to die in an alleyway while people film it on their phones," he said. "I want to be the kind of hero that makes villains think twice before they even put on the mask. I want to be the reason that the next quirkless kid who gets told they're worthless looks up and says, 'If that guy can do it, so can I.' That's not very Alucard of you. Alucard is 400 years of bloodshed. Izuku Midoriya is the kid who wanted to save people. I'm both, and both of them want the same thing. They just disagree on the method." She leaned against his shoulder. His arm went around her. "For what it's worth," she said, "I think both of them are doing okay. Just okay. You want a higher rating? I consumed an entire soul dimension and defeated the League of Villains 4 separate times. I deserve at least a pretty good. Pretty good. I'll take it." They stayed on the roof until the cold drove her inside. She was mortal, after all, and January nights were unforgiving. She kissed him on the cheek at the roof access door. "Good night, Izuku." "Good night, Ochako." She went inside. The door clicked shut. Izuku stayed. He sat on the edge of the roof, legs dangling, looking out over the campus and the city beyond. The night was clear. The stars were out. Somewhere below, he could hear Kirishima and Kaminari arguing about something, whether or not cereal was soup from the sound of it, and further away, the distant hum of the city doing what cities do. He thought about the alleyway, the one where he died, the sludge villain, the crowd, the phones, the blackness. He thought about the dark room, the man in the red coat, the plasma screen TV playing Adventure Time, the handshake that had changed everything. He thought about the 400 years that had come before, the wars, the crusades, the blood, the castles and the graveyards and the long, long nights, the centuries of being the most dangerous thing in the room and the loneliest thing in the world. He thought about what had changed. Not his power, not his identity. Something smaller. Something that a boy with green hair and red eyes and a shadow full of souls had somehow found in the space between what he was and what he wanted to be. A feeling. The kind that 400 years of walking the earth should have worn away completely. The kind that, somehow, against all odds, against all reason, against the fundamental nature of what he was, hadn't. He reached into his shadow and pulled out his phone. One last tweet for the night. He typed it slowly, deliberately, with the care of someone choosing words that mattered. This fucker. Still here. He put the phone away. The night was quiet. His shadow lay still beneath him, calm and deep and full of things that slept. The city breathed. The stars turned. The world kept spinning, the way it always had, the way it always would, long after the last hero hung up their cape and the last villain gave up their grudge. And on the roof of UA High School, a boy who had once been dead sat in the dark and smiled. Not the Alucard grin. Not the wide, sharp, too many teeth grin that made villains reconsider their career choices. A small smile, a human one. The kind that happens when you're not performing for anyone. When you're just sitting with yourself and finding for the first time in a very long time that the company is enough. The wind blew. His scarf, red, uneven, one end longer than the other, fluttered against his chest. He closed his eyes. He listened to the silence, and it sounded like home.
The roster is reaching god-tier levels. A huge shout-out to the newest legends joining the ranks and the longtime supporters who keep this community thriving. You guys are the fuel to the fire. Pro heroes. The elite front line, stepping up and setting the pace for the whole community. Jacob Rops, Dark Eye, DA, Fire 05, symbol of peace. The pillars of the community, the titans who keep our foundations solid and the hype at an all-time high. Damian Leon, Yam, Christian Mullins, Bully Maguire Shadow, Amory B, Kenneth Ponterus, Neostar Productions, Asael Cardenas, Shaquan Simmons, Thunder, Elijah Saunders, Peter Hamilton, Freddie Rose, Omega, Chris Talley, Remorsefuls, Black Vein, Joshua Hedrington, Aaron Abercrombie, Drift SK Eater, Akeno Himajima, Corey Tokaz, Yan, Devin Black, Crow, Dasher Games, Joe Bros, Ray Von Crimson River, Dante Alistair, Adam Yonkers, Blood Saints, Donna Cafe, Zeph, KC, Howie 60, Ignatius, Albert. Hope of the universe. The ultimate guardians, celestial tier supporters whose impact literally shines across the galaxy. Tayshawn Palmer, Keyshawn, Coldbane 4, The Maniac 563, Sean Brooks, Debbie Vo, LS Morningstar, Marl, Spintown, I Shoot X50, Greg Green, James, Kwon Yen Thompson, Juan, Zeno KJ. And that's Izuku Midoriya. Undead, unbothered, untouchable, and somehow, just barely, learning what it means to feel something again. If this hit different, smash that like button. You know the drill. Subscribe if you want more stories where the protagonist absolutely refuses to lose. Drop in the comments, what arc do you want next? I'll see you in the next one. Stay dangerous.